To the Grafton Select Board meeting for October 12, 2021 for 6 p.m. I want to welcome everyone who's attending, and I just want the public to know, please, that at this point in time, there will be no public comment for this meeting going into tonight. This will be interviews that the Select Board will be conducting with the 3 finalists for the Fire Chief position. Before we get further down on the agenda, I would like to ask the Board and members of the audience to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, so joining us tonight remotely are representatives from Badge Quest. I just want to make sure that Robert Ponery is here and Dylan Cogswell.
Robert's here.
Can we turn the audio up a little bit?
I got it right here.
Robert?
I
Okay.
got it right here.
Can you just say that one more time so we can make sure we hear you?
Yes, Robert Pomeroy's here.
I'm working on it.
Okay, 1 second. We're just working on some technical.
I've only spun it 35 times. Now, okay, now we're good. Try that. Bob, can you give us a sound?
Robert Pomeroy's here.
There you go.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And is Dylan here?
Cogswell. Dylan Cogswell.
Dylan? Okay. Hi, Dylan. Thank you for joining. Appreciate it. Okay. So with us tonight for this meeting of the Select Board, we have 3 candidates that are here for interviews. We have Badge Quest here. Does anyone have any questions for Badge Quest before we get started with the interviews? Anyone from Badge Quest wish to comment or say anything to us before we invite Jeffrey in here?
I think we're ready to go.
Okay, excellent. All right. Are we ready?
Good
Yes.
for Skinner?
Yep.
I'm just going to ask you to take a seat right there. Good. And we good to go?
Good evening. Hi,
evening.
and welcome.
Thank you very much.
I just want to go through real quick and just do some brief introductions here. My name is Peter Carlson. I'm Chair of the Select Board.
Colleen Roy, Vice Chair.
Matthew Upton, I'm the clerk.
Doreen DeFazio.
Ray Mead. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you.
too.
All right. So, have you been briefed on the process in which we're going to go through tonight? Each one of us is going to take turns asking questions, and I believe there could be some follow-up discussion based on responses. And are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to start off with myself. I have a list of questions here that are in order. I will start, then Colleen will go second, Matt will go third, Doreen will go fourth, and then Ray will go fifth. All right, without further ado, I want to welcome Jeffrey Legendre. Did I say it right?
That's fine. Yep. Legender.
Legender.
Yeah.
Thank you, Legender. You come from us from West Boylston. All right, and we're going to start off. So my first question to you, sir, is what prompted you to apply for this position here in Grafton?
Well, I have grew up in the area, originally from Uxbridge. Back in my early career, I was full-time in the town of Uxbridge Fire. Part-time, I worked right here in Grafton on the EMS system with Pathways Ambulance between here, Millbury, and Sutton as an EMT, and then as a paramedic as I went for that certification. Through training with some of the Grafton firefighters, and I've always had my eye on Grafton, and then when I saw this job posting, it was a definite that I was going to put in for it.
Okay, thank you. Colin?
What do you know about the town of Grafton and the Grafton Fire Department?
Grafton Fire Department is a predominantly call department, 3 stations. Runs probably approximately 500 calls a year. Pumper out of each station, towers out of the center, EMS is out of the old station at the ALS level. I believe it's 20 square miles, give or take. And kind of a cross section of research, education, residential properties. So it's kind of a mix of the Blackstone Valley, if you will.
Okay, Matt?
Sure. Why do you believe you'll be a good fit for the fire chief in Grafton?
I think most of my career I've always worked in, and now as the chief, managed a combination department. I grew up around a combination department, so I think I understand the dynamics of full-time, somebody else's full-time job, and now we're the second job, if you will, how to balance that and how to motivate the firefighters to keep responding and keep them motivated. I think I have been dealing with that quite a while in my career, that I understand where they're coming from, trying to balance life and family and full-time job and still their dedication to their time.
Thanks.
Doreen?
Hi, Jeffrey.
Hi.
What do you believe are the most important qualities that are necessary for the next fire chief to possess?
Transparency. You have a very large number of call firefighters, again, with their different working schedules. Have to be transparent, get that one message from the top all the way to the bottom. Using the officers, be honest to your word. If you say something's going to happen, you have to see it through. So they have to know that's going to happen. You're going to stick to your word.
Thank you. Ray?
So, let me just create a scenario. You're the fire chief in Grafton. You just got appointed. You've got six months to, in your opinion, to turn things around or to create things. How would you go about that in that first 6 months?
Well, I think hopefully there'll be some change within 6 months, but I have to understand what has been going on before I got here. What is the culture? What is the training? What is the calls we're going to? So I'd have to interpret that data to see, are we on the right path? Do I need to change something? I may not need to change anything. That's probably not the case, but I think I have to understand what's going on before you affect change, and then take the steps from the 10,000-foot view down to get that that change implemented, but most likely lay out steps so there's nothing unexpected. It's going to be a big change for this department. There hasn't been a full-time chief. There hasn't been somebody at the station. That's a challenge in itself that I experienced in Bolton when I became the first full-time chief there. Taking small steps, getting everybody comfortable with the transition, and then ultimately leading to the goal at the end is what we're looking for.
Can I just say one? Do you know Brendan Connor?
The name sounds familiar.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Okay.
I'm sorry, you want to follow up question?
Can I ask a follow-up question about Bolton?
Yes.
You are the first full-time fire chief in Bolton, and that's only been a couple years. So do you feel like you've accomplished what needed to be accomplished there, or are you just looking to take another challenge, like being the first-time fire chief again? What is your
Again, I'm not out applying for jobs all over the place. Grafton, again, was kind of the exception to the rule. Have I affected change there? Yes, I think it's been good. The fire and EMS were separate. I was tasked with merging that. That was done, started in July of 2019. We officially merged in January 1, 2020. So that's like that process I was talking about. We took over administration, got everybody comfortable. Here's how we're going to set it up. And then we had a big unveiling with the new patch and everything. And then stood up a paramedic service, a Class 1 ambulance, and a fly car for the regional paramedic response to the area towns. So I think I've affected change. Obviously, there's more I would do. I didn't expect Grafton to post, but I would keep moving forward. But that's the changes, the biggest changes that I've had there, and actually working with needs. Out of Princeton, we actually have a comfort care dog. We're the first fire department in Massachusetts to have a comfort care dog. Her and I are the matched pair. We've been deployed several times to area departments, even around here, for critical incidents. So these are things that I've done in my time there, and I see that progressing no matter where I am.
All right, thank you. So next question here is, what role do you see a full-time fire chief play in the community here in Grafton?
The chief in any town should be known by the people. It should be out and about, public education, even calls, educating half the public, or educating the public is a big part of that. Offering direction to the department. Where are we today? Where are we going to go? Laying the groundwork for that, I think, is the main task of the fire chief. And if we want everybody in town, what's important to the business owner? What's important to the citizen? If you don't strike up those conversations, you'll never find out what is important to them. I like to find out that information. What do you think? What do you know about the fire department? Is there something we could be doing better? And try to implement it. Now, you're not going to implement everything, but the more we can, we're better off as a department.
Colleen?
How accessible should the fire chief be to the members of the community, members of the department, and how would you accomplish this?
I would like to say I would have an open door, but that is too broad. I think events like Coffee with the Chief, as soon as somebody contacts me and would like to set up an appointment with them, so it's not just a constant flow in. If I have meetings or I'm out doing inspections or I have other department tasks to handle, I try to get back to them with a time, date that would work with them, and address it, not just leave it open-ended.
How about issues that might come up from members of the department?
A little more accessible to the members of the department. Same thing I would ask them. Hey, my normal business hours are, 8 to 5. But if you can't do that, can you meet at 5:30? Communication through email, phone, text, what is the best for your schedule. Let's try to get this accomplished so we don't leave that lingering. Something that could have been accomplished in a small task, and I keep putting it off, it's going to blow up into something. So at least address it instead of time to discuss it.
How do you feel about social media engagement?
There's positives and then there's negatives. It has to be closely monitored. If it's an official fire department site, have to have a policy as to what goes up there, what does not go up there. But it does create that communication with the town. What are we doing? Sometimes the only time you see the fire department is when you dial 911. It's good to see, we got a grant. We were fortunate enough to get training. So the public's now invested in what we see and what they see and what we're doing, and we're not just sitting behind the garage doors waiting for the next tone. But it would have to be closely monitored by administration.
I have a follow-up to Matt's question too. What about recruitment and retention internally within the department? So, we talked a little bit about education within the community, and as we're talking about the experience in mentoring the department itself, what are your views on recruiting and retaining the department?
Again, you have to motivate. So, again, talking with the members. Different members have different interests. I can talk to 50 firefighters, and there's going to be 50 different things that motivate them. It's trying to find the one that will encompass the most of them. Is there some class we can bring in that, they talked about heavy rescue? Yeah, we can do that. We can put in for a grant. We can use the resources we have within department. One thing that I found, especially with a predominantly call department, is you have plumbers, electricians, truck drivers. There is a lot of education, a lot of knowledge right there to keep the department moving in something new. I don't mess with electricity. Luckily, one of my captains is an electrician, so if I have a question, bounce it off of him, and then we've put on a class before. What can we do to keep us safe with electricity? So it's just knowing, and if I didn't start talking to everybody and finding out what their strengths, weaknesses, what interests them, I think that goes to retention as well. Oh, there's something new. We can keep it fresh.
Great, thank you. And then my actual question here. How would you convey your vision of the department's mission and values with the members of
Wait a
your
second.
department?
I'm so sorry.
She can ask the question.
Oh, I was gonna say, let Matt go and ask
Oh.
his next, if you could, and then we'll
we-
go to yours. Sorry about that.
No worries. So the next question really is about mentoring. So I'm interested in sort of two directions. What do you see, should you become our full-time fire chief, what do you see your opportunities for being mentored? How would you evolve, right, in your leadership and your skills and perspective? And then also, just as important, what's your experience been? What would your plan be for mentoring other department members?
My mentoring. I have a great number of chiefs in the area that I'll call them up still. As I said, I grew up around the fire station, so I had the air pack on when I was 8 years old and going through smoke buildings and this and that. Those were my original my mentors. Now they're retired, still my mentors. The job in itself hasn't changed. We've got new technology and things like that, but the real down, they were seeing fire every day. So I like to be a sponge. The older crews, listen to them. Just sit there and listen. Chiefs that I've worked for or become chiefs, same thing. I'll call them. Hey, I ran into a situation. I'm not afraid to ask for help if I need it. Through education, I've done the CFO class in Massachusetts, accredited fire chief. This year I've applied for the National Fire Academy EFO program. Unfortunately, they cut the class in half because of restrictions, so we're put off until 2022. So continuing to learn. There's something to learn new every day. I know I say that to my kids, but it's true. Could be as simple as an interaction with somebody. I didn't know that's what that meant, or just keep a mental note. Mentoring, I love this job. As I said, I've been doing it for a long time, and I think my father would tell you the first run was when I was 3 years old, and I was ticked off when he pulled me off the truck as it went out. So I want to find it. I want to leave it better than I found it. There's a lot going on, again, with technology, with the way we do attack fires nowadays. But I like to say that I'm kind of a hybrid. I love and maintain the tradition of the fire service, but we're progressing ourselves in knowledge and safety, and where I don't want to lose 100 firefighters a year like we have been. What can I do to affect that change? And I think that's the mentoring that I put in, the safety aspect. How many firefighters didn't wear SCBA when they went into fires? It wasn't that long ago. So implementing that stuff, the old with the new. And I think that's my specialty, is to meld the two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doreen?
Okay. So Jeffrey, how would you convey your vision of the department's mission and values with the members of your department?
Well, it starts with me, how I carry myself, I'm a chief, but I still like to get my hands dirty. I like to train. I'm at a fire scene, and I'm assuming I would be probably one of the first ones to show up. I'm not going to hesitate to pull a line, get everything ready, make sure they're good to go, everybody's safe, to do their job. By that action, I think that shows a lot to the membership that, yes, I'm the chief, but there's a job to be done. It's going to get done. And how I conduct myself will trickle down to my officers, the expectations, in my vision, and enforcing it with meetings with my officers, who will then go to the membership and portray that all the way down. That one clear message has to be relayed. If it even misses somebody, it could spiral. So I have to make sure that it's out, monitor what the message was, and have it repeated back to me through action or through discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleen, did you follow?
What would your vision be for the Grafton Fire Department?
I'd have to get to know more about Grafton, but overall, fire service, is we have a job to do. Keep it simple. It's difficult enough. We shouldn't have to think, how are we pulling hose lines? We practice till we can't get it wrong. And then, again, back to the motivation piece. I might read an article on a new gear. Oh, did you see this? And put that out. It's now an opening. Oh, can we do this? Or change this or change that. And now you have the firefighters. Well, get back to me. What can you tell me more about this? So now if you've engaged them to be more in depth and more working, and that is my vision. If everybody's bought in and doing the job, it tells me who wants to be there and who doesn't.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ray?
Hypothetical situation. You have multiple companies. They all do their own thing. The rules are, if there are any rules or procedures, they're not followed or adhered to. How have you ever run into this situation, and if you have, can you tell me how you resolved it, or can you tell me, if you haven't, how you would resolve things like that?
So sometimes there is and I've experienced the riff. It's even under the same roof. Union firefighters versus non-union firefighters. It's relaying that message. We're all here. We did the same job. We trained the same. We're all to the same standard. And making them realize, put them in work groups together, because these was on the same department, and they kind of segregated each other full time and call. And then you start mixing up the groups. Then I start seeing, oh wait, they know what they're doing. That would be the same in multiple stations. That would be my plan. We are one department with 3 stations. We have to work together. Each one is dependent on the other. Maybe that hasn't been the case. I don't know if that exists in Grafton, but Station 3's got to work with Station 2 because at a fire, the town of Grafton Fire Department is there. I need to know how the lieutenant from Engine 2 is going to interact with his crew and then with the RIT from the rescue. So it would be a lot of that and a lot of together training to begin with, just to evaluate if that situation did exist.
Can I follow up, Peter?
Yeah, go ahead, Ray.
So, SOPs, SOGs. I'm sure you're very familiar with those. That every department has those. How would you walk into a situation where those don't exist?
You have to look at if there is anything, or I do have to start fresh. I have penned several SOPs, SOGs. Obviously, they're mine, so that's going to come with me. Some I have implemented, some I haven't implemented because it wasn't pertinent to something that affected my department. You have to start fresh. What's the standard? What's NFPA saying as a recommendation? What is the training we're receiving at the Massachusetts Fire Academy? You have to use the training, the guidance that's out there, and then put something together. If there's nothing, obviously life safety would be the first one. If that doesn't exist, that's going to be the first one that we're working on. And again, using established SOPs, SOGs from area towns. There's a lot of sharing of SOPs, SOGs, because they do pull from national guidance that we could use if it benefits the department and our setup.
All right, so Jeff, you did tell me you had some experience with call departments earlier in one of the first questions. Could you focus a little bit more, and you did give us like how you would approach members need to balance work and life, you know, in and outside of the fire department. You mentioned earlier that you would, make, accommodations if you need to meet with individual members.
Mm-hmm.
But would you give specifics as to what your vision would be around a recruitment, training, and retention program? Could you give us a specific on what one you think ought to look like for Grafton?
To assume, like any call department, you have some members that work days, some members that work nights. One that I have implemented is historically training is Tuesday nights. And some people miss that and they get discouraged and eventually leave. So we just implemented is a secondary training set up during the day. So if they work at night, here we're offering the same training that we did at night. We're going to do it during the day, which would lead itself to possibly keeping and retaining those employees that just get frustrated that they weren't attending training, maybe put out by other members of the department, or because we kind of saw that happening. There was some conflicts by eliminating it and adding a second option. We're in the infancy of it, but it seems to be going well. So that was one change. I think if it bodes to your question, that I put in for retention.
And if I could just have you follow up on your, you talked about recruitment earlier. What would a recruitment program look like for you?
Well, I think we do have to use social media. We do have to have some bravado, if you will, with, hey, do you know what it is like to be a firefighter? Movies, on social media, getting involved with public events. I don't know if you do a fall festival or anything like that, but tables, start talking to people that, we are looking for more members. Here's and really lay it out. Here's what it's going to look like. We're expecting within the first year you'll attend the fire academy. Yes, it's 6 months, but you then certified. Now you can go do the work that you signed up for. Be realistic, not just sell an image, but really sell what it is. You're giving back to your community, but there is some work to be put in. That's how I would sell it.
Did anyone want to follow up to that? We can go to the next question.
Yeah, I can, Peter, if you,
Okay, go ahead.
so, I'm not gonna try to speak for Peter, but I think that, I think what, maybe in the department that you're in on now, there's no need for a recruitment program. Firefighters across the country, whether they're full-time, volunteer, or call, the roles are diminishing. And recruitment is required in every department, whether it's Worcester Fire or, Auburn or Grafton or Sutton or wherever it is. So what else besides social media, would you use or would you think about to recruit more firefighters?
Well, besides the social media, we have to be involved in the community. So that's what I was saying, like the fall festivals, being out. We have to be realistic. We can't have, come be a firefighter and bolster their numbers, but then they find out what it really is, the training, the amount of hours. You're right, calls are down. Everybody's fighting for positions. I can open up a magazine or a want ad. Pretty much every department in the area is looking for full-time, call, career. You got to sell your department. If you don't have the image that they're looking for, we have to sell that. How do you do that? You get involved in the community. Community events. We start maybe a Explorer Post at the high school. We have internships with the high school. Now you're getting down to another age bracket. Currently in Bolton, we have the Neshoba Cadet Program. It's a 33-year program where they're 3 students a day respond from the high school to assist us on ambulance calls. That program has produced doctors, surgeons, EMTs, paramedics. We can do that here. We can go to the high school. We can have an internship. We can motivate, maybe it'll motivate a teacher. I don't know. To see more community members involved in our department. So those are a couple more ideas. Social media is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot underneath that. That would definitely be my put it up and we're done. We have to be involved. Now, is there, like I said with the school, is there an interest? I don't know. We can go through the Scouts and do the Explorer program. We can set up our own and do like a Neshoba Cadet program. What are they allowed to do? I don't know. That's how much does the town want to be involved? What do we want for liability? Are we just training at the station, or are they actually going to ride shifts with us? That could be, I'm even up for, and I have an outline for a 3 credit class that I presented in Neshoba for fire, and it was fire and health services. That would be done at the high school. It didn't get enacted because, of course, March 2020 came and wiped that out. But it's still, so I have thought about that. It's not just social media.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just one quick follow-up. How successful have your recruitment efforts been in Bolton?
We have added 6 firefighters in the past 18 months. We're waiting to send them to the academy. The academy is just starting back up again. And the next recruit program is in Leicester from Bolton. That's a little far, so they're waiting for the spring. But we've gained 6 in the past 18 months.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are those 6 full-time or call?
Call. There is only 2 full-time employees in Bolton, myself and one of the lieutenants.
If you had to be shipwrecked on a desert island and all of your human needs, such as food and water, were taken care of, what 2 items would you want to have with you?
Radio.
You mean like Pandora, or what kind of radio?
Yeah, like an old battery operated,
I'm just kidding.
radio.
I'm joking with you.
'Cause maybe there's a ship going by and I would hear it. I don't know.
That's good.
Yeah.
Shade. And you see Castaway and all that. Building shade. I'd like a nice hut or something with me.
Very nice.
Matt? Yeah. I'm wondering how you would address morale issues. So obviously, we're seeing a change of leadership.
Mhm.
Grafton as a town is growing. There's a lot of challenges in terms of providing, fire services and whatnot. You're going to have that continued challenge with call firefighters and balancing that work-life mix. So I'm wondering what you would do to kind of keep morale up and keep a positive culture.
Sure. again, I think it comes down to communication. There has to be communication from the firefighters. Is there a situation, and I've been part of it, to pull somebody in the office and say, hey, something's different, your calls are down, and you find out that something's going on at home. Being sensitive to that, trying to help them balance. They want to be there. Coming up with alternatives if possible. Addressing an issue right away with them, trying to give advice, offer resources that we have that may show that the fire service is a family. We are your second family. We are looking out for you. And sticking to my word. If I say I'm going to do something, it's going to be done. I implemented a 10% rule back in January. Call numbers were down. And yes, did it lead to some yelling and screaming and that I'm never going to make it? It did.
What was that rule?
They had to maintain a 10% response. And after I had a second department meeting, explained, if we're not training, we're not showing up, our skills and everything's deteriorating. You're actually harming your brother or sister firefighter by not attending, to put it into reality for them. And I felt that was kind of it went up from there. Morale picked up again. It's like, oh, I wasn't punishing anybody. It was really based around our safety and going through the trucks. And I've seen numbers come up and I've seen some go down. We've had discussions and I said, no hard feelings with me. If there's other things you can't deal with and this is too much for you right now, totally understand. I've had a couple people take leave and then they've cleared whatever they had to clear, come back, and they're now a productive member. So I think it's that being a people person, you gotta be able to move and alter and offer advice, guidance, to get them where they need to be if you want them to maintain that high level of responding, proficiency at their job. There is a lot to do. Asking somebody to go to the academy for 6 months for their second job is an awful lot, and you got to make a big deal of it because it is a big deal. Balancing family life, kids, sports, whatever they are going on, and still work 9 to 5, get in your car, go to Stowe, class 6 to 10, and do that 2 to 3 nights a week. That is a lot, and whatever we can do to help them and keep them motivated, that's what we're going to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doreen?
Okay, so it's in Grafton's best interest to maintain a hybrid department as long as possible. So we want to talk a little bit about your experience transitioning to hybrid, and how should the new chief integrate the call firefighters with full-time staff while keeping the department motivated, engaged, and retained?
So I would tend to say, if I was to make Grafton Fire full-time, you're looking at a minimum of 20 firefighters. Where nobody can pull that off in a short amount of time. You have to reassure the call department that while I'm integrating, it's to cover periods of the day that obviously there's going to be some dip with call response. There is always a place for the call firefighter within the department, and I don't see any one chief changing that in a decade here. Be looking at $100,000 minimum a firefighter. As I said, 20. I don't think any departments, any town's budget can take that. It's never had that. It's not through retirement or the funds were there. This is something new. So you have a large town. We're going to need call firefighters. I would say the full time would be kind of transition in from 2 or 3 during the day. Then you're going to have night coverage. So you're adding a couple slowly as Mr. Carlson, I think you've said the town is growing. So as revenues come in, add 1 or 2. Stagger it in and plan it out. over a 5-year or 10-year master plan? Are we have any plans of starting an ambulance service? Do we have any plans of starting an ALS service? And stagger those in too, because now you're talking about more money for the industry, firefighter, paramedic. The base start of purchasing 1 to 2 ambulances. How are we going to lay out that master plan over 10 years? But still reinforcing, this is only one little piece of the pie. The rest is remaining in the call department, and I don't see that changing. I'll safely say a decade, from going from 1 full-time and 1 full-time chief to 20. And even Northborough, when I started there, we were 3-ish, 2 a shift. Now they're up to 5. That's 21 years that it went from 2 a shift to 5.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ray?
So you talked about EMS, and I know, I've read your resume and everything, and you're a paramedic, and you've done, what I see and what I've talked to people about is an outstanding job in combining the fire department and the EMS department in Bolton. Grafton is very fortunate to have an ambulance service with an extraordinary backup system that we don't pay anything for. So I'm just wondering, you had just mentioned about, EMS, are we going to do EMS? Are we going to bring in ambulances? Are we going to bring in staff to do things like that? How do you feel as a paramedic about coming into a department that does nothing in medicals other than a random first responder?
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's as you said, you're paying 0 for the current contract. That works for the town. I'm not here to push an ambulance service. I would probably, put me in the seat, respond a couple times. Respond as needed. Am I going to be a paramedic? No, but I'm an assist. As you said, a first responder. So my history, my experience would lend an already good system another feather in the cap. I'm not here to change anything with that overnight. I was just offering those as possibilities.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
But I'm a fire chief, and I would know my role in this department. If I can, again, help another agency, I'm going to do that. Carry a bag. It's not below me. Offer some advice of my 20 plus years as a medic if they ask for it. Truly, I know a fair amount of the medics that work in town still. I've worked with them. They were maybe some of the older medics when I was on the street, and some of the younger ones. Just a helping hand. We're not an ALS department, and that's fine.
Can I keep going? I didn't answer that other question.
Yeah, that would be good.
So, what do you think the biggest challenges would be for the next fire chief coming into Grafton?
Because it's the first, that's a very big change to a department. It's creating that morale, making sure we have a morale, but clearly delineate what my vision is and where we're going, speaking with the officers, get the roles and responsibilities that they currently have, try to address what I may be taking over or maybe not taking over, so they're aware of what's going on and I'm not taking it from them. The situation has changed. I'm here, we'll call it 37 to 40 hours a week, probably more. That I'm doing this because I'm now being paid to do it and run the department. It's nothing against you as an individual. that I learned from personal experience. There were when I took over in Bolton. So I think it's the being clear with the officer, being clear with the firefighter. Things are going to change a little bit. My expectations, laying them out there. So there's no question. That's the biggest challenge, making sure that message is out there. Because the chances of me seeing every member of the department, it's probably going to take a couple weeks before I see every member of the department. So to collect all that and make sure that they understand.
Where did 37 hours come from?
I'm sorry.
That's my current contract.
Okay, no, just kidding. I didn't, he said 37 to 40 hours. I'm going, 37? Where'd that come from?
Yeah, no, my current contract is actually written at 37, so that's
Oh,
why
okay.
it was on the brain. I just threw it up there.
No problem.
Colleen, do you have a follow-up?
Yep. So you've said it's difficult to craft what your exact vision for Grafton would be at this time until you kind of get in and get to know the department. But you have done this in Bolton, where you became the first full-time fire chief there. How long did it take for you to craft your vision and get your message out when you stepped into the role in Bolton?
Probably about a month. I have to know who and what, and who the players, what roles, responsibilities they currently have. That's why I said I couldn't do it now, because this department is set up different than Northbridge, set up different than Westboro, just to name a couple area towns. So I think you have to understand where they're coming from and what's in place before you change it, implement it. So within the first 30 days, you get a good picture, because obviously I would have a department meeting, an officers meeting at that point, and then start to affect some change.
Okay. Does anybody else have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, I do.
All right, why don't you go ahead and start, and we'll go down the line here.
So, I'm going to go back to the 37 hours.
Okay.
I think that's,
I can't tell you the last time I worked 30
no,
hours, so.
you know what? I totally understand. I know that. So let's just say it's 37 to 40 hours a week.
Sure.
What would be your ideal command structure for backup?
If the department has a deputy, it would be the deputy in my absence. The deputy should have risen to that rank for some reason, and then down to captain, down to lieutenant.
Okay, so but can you you work, and I'm just going to say this: you work 8 to 5.
Okay.
5 o'clock, you're gone.
Yep.
Your deputy's not full-time.
Okay.
Your deputy's a call. What type of program would you put together to cover from 5 p.m. until 8 a.m. the next day, and then weekends? So I'm kind of,
Yeah, when I leave, I think this is where you're going, and
yeah,
please
could
stop
be,
me.
Could be, yeah.
When I leave town at 5, my radios don't go off. I'm reachable by radio, telephone, email. Just because I say I'm in the office 37, there have been plenty of nights, plenty of weekends that I respond back to town to handle an incident. Or I'm closely monitoring via radio, as I know I am responding.
Yep.
Oh, my captain, a lieutenant, and 3 or 4 people on. It's not a house fire, it's a motor vehicle accident. They should be able to handle that. If they can't, or something pops up, or I'm listening, either I go in, or I get a phone call from them, and I'm completely reachable. Just because I lock my door at 5 o'clock, I'm still on. That's just 37 hours on paper that I'm in the physical station. A fire chief should be around after 5 p.m. If I'm going on vacation, yes, that's a notification to the board, the town manager. Hey, I'm away for 2 weeks. So-and-so's in charge of an admin for the next 2 weeks. I'm on vacation. Did I address your question?
I was trying to, you did in a certain way. But, as you know, being a firefighter, your backup is sometimes more important than your first arrive. And if you go on vacation, I kind of wanted to know if you, in Bolton, again, if you had a backup plan. So this captain is on this weekend, or this captain is on this weekend, or something like that. That's kind of what I was trying to get to, and I probably danced around the pole way too much to try to,
Okay.
so you didn't understand that, but that's kind of what I was looking for. So, you know, it's like going out on an ambulance call, and you get another ambulance call, and you only have one ambulance.
Mhm.
Where's your backup coming from? So your backup is just as important.
Correct.
And
So
it's-
I have a very strong 10 alarm run card
Okay,
that lists out all my resources for first alarm, working fire, and then down the bottom, I have all BLS ambulances that are in the backup, all the ALS that are the backup. So they call number one for that district, not available, they go down. They have 6 or 7 choices. That's what I did for my town. When I took over, we had 6 fire districts. It was too small of an area in 6 cards. We made it 3, but then we bolstered it to a full 10 alarm card with ALS, with BLS, ambulances, with additional special resources in the area, the dive team. So every officer could open the book or open their phone actually and go, oh, I need the dive team. There's the number. I need hazmat. There's the number. So that operational backup is right there and available for them. And you have to give them the resources and train them how to use the resources so we have a backup plan.
Peter, one more?
Does anyone else have a follow-up for, just a question before we go on to the next one?
No,
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ray.
So you get appointed to the Grafton Fire Department as the chief. And 10 years from now, you decide to retire. What do you want people to say about you when you retire?
That I did it right. That I knew my job. That they knew that I loved what I did. That I was fair. I was honest. And I know it's cliche, but left it better than I found it. That's always been kind of a building block over my life and why I keep going to school, going to conferences, going to interactions with, other, taking specific training classes that I'm teaching out in the Berkshires. Their environment is very different than ours. To learn, maybe I'll get a new skill out of it. That may help us here in Grafton that one time. So that's how I want to remember it, that I put my heart and soul into it for the right reasons and kept everybody safe.
Anyone else have any other questions?
I just have one question.
Go ahead.
Actually, a couple, but I'll start with this one. I'm interested in what your experience was at the assessment center and how you feel you did.
It was a long day. It was a very fair process. I honestly have not. I've been through one other, so it's very hard to compare. This one was well run. Real life scenarios, nothing too crazy. Well worth the time. It made me reflect a couple times on what I do or what I would react, and to even look up some scenarios because you knew it came from somewhere. So, did it make the internet? Did it make writing where this incident happened? So, it did throw up some red flags. I think I did okay. I'm not sure. That's what it was.
Just one last one. I make note that it looks like you've been full-time with Bolton for a couple of years.
Yes.
And I imagine there were a lot of challenges coming in, helping them transition, being their full-time, first full-time fire chief and whatnot. I'm a little surprised that just a couple of years in, having sort of set the culture, put a bunch of wheels in motion, it looks like you've been pretty successful with grants and whatnot. You've put something together that you're looking to sort of move on at this point. So I'm wondering if you could just, I'm going back to the first question of kind of what prompted you to apply. I know you've had Grafton on your radar a little bit, but I guess I'm just a little bit surprised that at this stage, having just built, the department the way that you want, I would imagine, that you're looking to kind of transition off to, potentially another town.
Sure. As I said, understand it's 3 years, and if this was 5 or 6 years, it'd be less of a question, but it's happening now. I actually did sit with my town manager and we talked about it and discussed it, and as I said, I'm pretty transparent when it comes to that. I didn't want to have any secrets from him or the town. I'm thankful for what they gave me the opportunity.
Sure.
But as I said, being from this area, if this was, I wouldn't be out looking in Rhode Island or anything like that. It was this specific position came available.
Got it.
And when's the next time it's going to come available? I don't know.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other questions?
I have one quick one.
Doreen?
So Jeffrey, as this board makes a decision on the next fire chief, one of the things that we're going to be discussing is residency, and maybe not even in the town of Grafton, but we'll make a determination of, whether or not, let's say, in your case, West Boylston is close enough for us to determine whether or not that would be appropriate for a full-time chief. And I just want to know what your thoughts are on that. Would you be willing to relocate if necessary? And just your honest opinion on that.
I would honestly choose not to. Not to say I wouldn't. My wife is a principal of a school, and to move her and my family and my kids, that would be a family decision. I can't, in all reality, tell you, yeah, we're going to move. That's a pretty big impact to our life. I'm 19 minutes from normal travel. I'm 21 minutes from Bolton, and that works out.
Yep.
That would be a discussion. Actually, 6 years ago, we did try to live in Grafton, and it didn't work out. So we did have eyes on Grafton then, but now we're kind of settled in West Boylston, and my daughter's a freshman at St. Bernard's in Fitchburg, and to move her down here would be quite a radical change for a 19-minute commute.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate all that.
All right, before we transition, do you have any questions for us, Jeff?
I don't think so. I think it sounds like, the decision will be made tonight, and we'll know the process, and it's been quite a lengthy process, a good, thorough process. I don't think I have any questions at this point. It's been explained as we've moved on.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for coming out tonight, and I want to personally thank you on behalf of us and the residents for your services in first responding in the fire department. I know it's not an easy job, but all of us are appreciative of the work and the service that you have done over the years, and demonstrating that with your resume and your over 20 years of experience. It shows your passion. But I just want to thank you again for coming out tonight, and I look forward to following up with you.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Let's just take a couple-minute recess, and we'll go to the next candidate. All right, Bill?
Great.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome back. I want to welcome Chief Thurs here with us this evening. Just a brief introduction of the board here. My name is Peter Carlson. I'm the chair.
Colleen Roy, Vice Chair.
Matthew Upton, I'm the clerk.
And Doreen DeFazio.
Ray Mead.
And good evening, and thank you for coming out, Chief. Just wanted to let you know the process here is we've got a number of questions. Each one of us is going to take turns answering or asking some of the questions. We may have some follow-ups pertaining to the question that any one of the members may want to ask for some further information. So,
Do you mind if I just adjust my seat?
of course.
Thank you. Felt like I was low to the ground there. Okay.
All right.
Much better.
That was totally by accident.
There's a lot of water on the table.
All right. Well, thank you for coming out, Chief. And I'm going to start off with the first question. Is that what prompted you to want to apply for the position of chief here in the town of Grafton?
So I've been doing this for 36 years as a fire chief. And just to give you a little background of who I am, married 26 years to my wonderful wife, 3 adult children now. And in my private life, I work for a regional bank. And I'm at that point in my life that I want to dedicate my entire career to public safety. And I would say now that my youngest is off in college and I'm looking to where I have more flexibility to move while staying in the New England area, I've recently started expanding my search outside of the state that I live in to other New England communities. And when I saw that the Grafton opportunity was available, I decided to apply for it. So,
Okay. Great. Thank you.
What do you know about the town of Grafton and the Grafton Fire Department?
what I'm learning, well, Grafton's a much smaller community than what I'm from. The area that I currently live in is about 36,000 people, 52 square miles. So I'm learning that Grafton's much smaller than that. The fire department is going through a transition with going to your first full-time fire chief, something that I went through 25 years ago back in my department. Similar structure as far as how it is set up. Very similar to what we do where I'm from. We don't do EMS related calls. We're just predominantly all fire and hazard mitigation department. So the area is a little bit smaller than what I'm used to, and it's going to be an interesting time. So maybe you want to be part of the interesting changes as you experience, and hoping to bring some of what I went through in my department 25 years ago when we hired our first full-time fire chief. So.
All right. Any follow-up question? Okay. Next, Matt.
Sure. I'm wondering, why you specifically, what you bring to the table that would make you a really good fit for our fire chief here in Grafton.
I have a passion for the fire service. Currently, like I told you earlier, 36 years of doing this. In addition to that, I'm an adjunct instructor at our academy in the state that I'm from. And my background in the private sector, where it comes back into basically management. I have an undergrad degree from St. Anselm College and a master's in business administration from the University of Hartford. So I have that business sense that brings as far as an administrator. I work a lot with numbers and budgets in my primary job to this day. And the fact that I've lived what you're going to soon embark on when we went to our first full-time fire chief. I kind of had that knowledge of some of the pitfalls and some of the good things that go along with it. And I understand that it's going to be a challenge for anybody that walks into this position. And I feel that I have that experience that I could offer to the town.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Doreen?
Hi, Chief. What do you believe are the most important qualities that are necessary for the next fire chief to possess?
It's understanding the culture of not only the department, but the community. And, before a decision's made, or even for myself personally, I want to understand what the department's going through and where they got to get to this juncture in the road as far as why is it now time to go to a full-time administrator, full-time fire chief. So, and if you don't mind, do you mind repeating? I want to
Of
make sure I
course.
capture it all.
Yeah, of course. So what are the most important qualities that are necessary for the next fire chief to possess?
Thank you. Open-minded. What's the mission of the organization? What is it that the members see? Because again, what's the ultimate goal as the fire chief is to make sure that we continue to keep it a call department. And how are we going to recruit new members and continue to keep, and how are we going to retain our existing members? Wanting to continue to do this. It's an individual that has to be creative too. Think outside the box. And when presented with a problem, make sure that whoever's presenting that problem also brings some solutions to the table, so that it's about teamwork and it's about getting everybody's to buy into where we want to go as an organization. So it's also being an active listener, hearing what everything is. I'm trying to understand what the underlying issue may be. So those are all problem-solving skills that you need to bring to the table to be a good fit for this position.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Chief, hypothetically, you get the job. In your first month, what would be the most important things that you would want to do and get done, and in the next 3 to 6 months to accomplish?
The first month is knowing my members or the members of the department, knowing who they are as individuals, not only as members of the fire department providing services to the community. It's also knowing their families and what drives them to what's their drive to be here, to continue to serve the community. Fires are down. A lot of people join. When I joined the fire department 36 years ago, put out fires. Well, there's not a lot of fires anymore. It's a lot of helping your community and what's that drive to get up at 2-3 o'clock in the morning for a call that it may be so mundane that it's like I don't want to do this anymore. So what keeps them going? So I think in the first month is getting to know each individual within the organization, getting their feedback, getting their goals and what some of their objectives may be, where they want to see the organization and go. 30 days goes by very quickly. It's a lot of work. And how do you meet 80 people or 90 people and get all that and try to process all those things? Hopefully you'll find a common denominator, and over the next 90 days to 180 days, work on some of those processes from the department. Now that's just the department. It's also getting to know everybody else in town government. It's also getting to know the community. So if you take it down and bifurcate it to understanding the membership, understanding the different organizations that are within the town of Grafton, getting to know their personnel, and it's not just the director, it's all their employees, and from the person that turns the lights off at night to the person that opens up the door in the morning, who is everybody within the town organization, and then getting yourself ingrained into the community to see what is it the community wants to know, and what's the message. How do they do they really understand that Grafton Fire Department's a call fire department, that there's not somebody there sleeping in the firehouse 24/7. So that's my 30 to 90 to 180 day plan. A lot of work. It's not a 9 to 5 job. This is a job that's 365, 24 hours a day. At 5 o'clock doesn't mean I go home. It means continuing to work. So it's a huge learning curve for anybody who walks through this door, especially if you're not familiar with the area.
Can I ask a follow-up to that?
Sure.
So Chief, you've talked a lot about, in the answer to that question, getting to know people. What other kinds of things would you be looking at in evaluating the current fire operations here in town?
Training, individuals' records, operations. My department, we call them SOGs, maybe they're SOPs or department directives. Making sure that they meet the current standards. Where are we lax? And what's not broken? And focus my attention onto those areas that I feel. And again, getting along with the rest of the command staff, getting their input too, is where they want to see. I look at the fire chief as a facilitator to help us get to where we want to go as an organization. So, again, it's understanding who the membership is, where we're going to go, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. Focus on those weaknesses. Focus on our weaknesses as a department overall. And then establishing some measurable goals and objectives that are achievable. And along the way, if they need to be tweaked, we need to tweak them and come up with a plan B or a plan C.
Thank you.
Chief, so outside of the department, what role do you envision the chief have or play in the community in which they're serving?
Well, he's a representative of the community. He's a department head, or he or she's a department head. That's a reflection of the Grafton community. You're representing the community, whether it's on a Saturday at the local store, to attending an event that might go on within town. You're a figurehead, and it's upholding the core values of the organization and as the town as well. The role, getting involved, getting engaged in the community, to learn the community. I'd rather meet somebody at a civic event than at 3 o'clock in the morning when it's their worst nightmare because their house just caught on fire, they had some type of tragic situation, is to have that interaction ahead of time.
Colleen?
How accessible should the fire chief be to members of the community, members of the department, and how would you accomplish this?
I'm sorry, accessible?
Yes.
Oh, okay. It's an open door policy. For the community, it's, again, being at those civic events, getting, and not waiting to be invited. Almost inviting myself, getting to know who the different organization leaders may be, and making that introduction. When you look at the department, it's getting out behind that desk and not just being focused 9 to 5, especially in a call department. When people are at work and understanding the training structure, if they're training on a night at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, the chief should be there to, and I understand that Grafton has 3 different fire stations. It's going around, and hopefully they're all training on the same night. When I took over my department 12 years ago, that was one of the things I wanted to implement, so that I had everybody training on the same night, so that I could make my rounds, and also so that we could cross-train one another. Because in order for an organization to be successful, it has to be cohesive. And again, if there's issues, there's problems, I want to hear about it. I don't want the surprises. I also don't want to have somebody come in and just do a dump on my desk and walk out. I want them to come in and bring me their solutions to what the problem may be. And now, at the end of the day, not to be a pushover, ultimately it affects me. I'm the final decision maker, whether I agree with that individual or not. We can agree to disagree. So, and then accessibility is, I am a firm believer you have an email or a phone call that's left with a voicemail, that whoever that is, it's returned within 24 hours. And if I don't know the answer, I'm gonna tell that person. I need more time to do some research, or I may not be the right person, but I'm gonna find you that right person that has the ability to answer your question, and to follow up to make sure that whoever I pass that to, that they did do that. It goes back to being a representative of the organization. So 24/7, 365. That's what a fire chief is. And there's been plenty of dinners, birthdays, and Christmas mornings that have been missed because of the role that I've decided to take for my career. And it's also having an understanding family that they recognize that. So.
Okay. Any follow-ups?
Just one. How do you feel about social media?
I am not I'm not very well versed in social media.
Okay.
It has some good points. It also has some bad points. I'll give you my good points. It's great for PR. It's great for getting the message out. Fire Prevention Week or something that the organization is doing. I struggle with some people that put way too much out on social media. And I've had actually an incident in my own community involving one of my members where it got out of hand and because of social media.
I read about that.
It was an interesting week, and it was the week of my 26th wedding anniversary, so that consumed a lot of my time. So it's got some good points, but it also has some I have some concerns about it, and that comes back to having a strong social media policy.
Yep. Okay.
And making sure that everybody adheres to that. So.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Great, Matt.
Yeah. So I'm interested in mentoring. So obviously, a big part of this job is continuing your own development as a chief, and then also, maybe more importantly, mentoring other command staff and call firefighters in the department and whatnot. So I'm interested in what your experience has been with that and what your plan would be, formal or informal, to implement a mentoring capability in Grafton.
So I'm a firm believer of developing succession planning. Sometimes it's very difficult to do that. One of the things that I did 4 years ago was I applied to the Fire Academy to give back, mask is bad, to give back my 30 years of knowledge and to teach other people. I believe it's networking is huge in the fire service. And if you go back to my department, I've worked with other people that wanted to get career jobs. Through networking, I've met a lot of other career chiefs that I've helped other people get career jobs, whether that's sitting down and doing a mock oral interview, helping them with resumes or letters. But it's also looking to find somebody that's I'm not gonna be the fire chief for my entire life here. There's gonna come a time that I do want to retire, and making sure that I have a succession plan for somebody, hopefully within the organization, that will move up into to fill my role in that seat. So mentoring's huge. And you asked about social media, and I said that I'm not really a fan of it, but I realize that's when you sit at, and we've gone from communicating with our mouths to our fingers and texting, all that, that's the next generation. And if you look at the fire service, technology is huge now in the fire service. So
Yep.
you can't put your head in the sand and ignore it. You have to get involved. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but you need to get involved and understand what's going on. So when I look at mentoring, I think it's vital. And at the end of the day, it's gratifying to me because someone has come out, seeked me out to help them to get where they want to go, whatever their goal was. My goal 36 years ago was to be a fire chief. I've met my goal. So now my goal is to help somebody else get whatever it is for them. So.
Thanks.
Okay. Ray?
Chief,
I'm sorry, I skipped one. Ray, I'm sorry, Doreen.
No,
oh,
no problem.
I had
Thank
a
you.
good question.
Oh,
Your question is
wait
still
your
good, Ray.
wait your turn. Chief, how will you convey your vision of the department's mission and values with the members of your department?
Plastered all over the firehouse. Plastered the mission statement of the Grafton Fire Department, the apparatus bays and the hallways. And align it with some type of words. To me, what I've done, commitment, respect, and integrity. And always refer back to that mission statement. And with everything we do, positive and negative, reflect back to what that mission is. You know, good things are great. You know, we always hear about, we don't hear a lot about the good things. We always hear about the negative things, but I think you have to mold both of them together. And as a leader, also means that you have to live up to that mission statement and the core values of the organization. You have to demonstrate that to the rank and file, as well as the community. So, that's one of the objectives that I did, and continue to just preach it. Put it on my letterhead, put it on our social media page, our website. You know, this is our mission, this is what we're all about. And if you watch the NBC Nightly News on the weekend, you know, Jose Diaz always leaves with a statement, you know, thank you for your time, it's been an honor, or thank you for the privilege of having your time, it's been an honor. That's what I look at, like, for the mission statement and a core value, when thanking everybody when they come to a call, good or bad, and just continue to live it. So hopefully everybody catches on and it gels as an organization.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask a follow-up question to that,
Yeah.
Chief, if you don't mind. What process in your last job did you go through to develop that mission statement?
I reached out to a friend of mine who was a former fire chief who took on a new role, and it came into doing officer development. Because when I took over, I had some pretty strong goals for officer development, which was met with opposition. So I wanted to take a less stricter approach, and I brought him in and we talked about mission statement. And the officers in my department, we created our core values. And from there it took off.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Ray.
Thank you. Chief, you've always been in Glastonbury, correct?
Yes, sir.
So, from what I read and from what I looked at, you followed a very good chief.
Okay.
Okay. No, you don't. No, you don't have to answer that. So,
I've worked for many chiefs, so I'm just trying to figure out which one you're thinking about, but that's okay.
the one I read about.
Okay.
So, here's a scenario. You've got one department with multiple stations. Department-wide procedures are none to be found in place or enforced. Have you ever experienced this situation? And if you have, how was it resolved? And if not, how would you resolve it?
So, in order for us to be successful, there's got to be a set of rules, a set of guidelines, a set of procedures. If there isn't one, well, that's building the foundation of the organization that needs to happen. If we're not following our rules or any of our standards, we're not going to be very successful. I've been fortunate that some of the rules were in place prior to me taking over, and I continue to implement them. If we're going to allow things to run amok, you're not going to be a successful chief. You're not going to be there very long. But I do believe that there should be some type of company mascot or company logo or something like that, that, you know, a little bit of pride, a little bit of spirited competition amongst the other departments or stations. I call them stations, companies. I've managed 4 companies. On the front door, we're one department. On the back door, you want to put your company logo or your company nickname, I don't have a problem with that. At the end of the day, we're one organization that's going to follow the rules and regulation. It's one organization that I have oversight of. And that's the vision that I would hope that the rest of the command staff would want to follow. Because if that doesn't happen, whoever sits in the seat will not be successful. It'll just run afoul.
Out of curiosity, what is an example of like a company nickname that you saw on the back of the door?
So one of my stations was named after, has an Indian name after it. So I allowed them to put their logo on the back door of their truck. I have another company that sits in a particular area of town that had its own little nickname for it because of a reservoir. They adopted that name. I have one company who, our very first deputy chief, I might be dating myself, some of you remember the cartoon Deputy Dog? That was their mascot. He probably doesn't know who Deputy Dog is.
We all look at William.
Internet's a powerful
Yeah,
tool.
let me Google that.
Yeah.
I'll get back to you.
So,
He
I
thinks
lo-
Mo,
I-
Larry, and Curly run a deli.
I allowed them to put, well, I didn't allow them, a prior chief, I was actually the house captain, allowed us to put that mascot on the apparatus. So it's a little bit of that company pride, because you want to have that little bit of friendly competition. You know, first one in, last one out, you know. So again, it creates a little bit of spirited mentoring, excuse me, not mentoring, spirited competition amongst the different companies. So.
Okay, anyone else have any follow-ups? All right. So I've got a couple two-part questions here, but what is your experience today with call departments? I know you've only worked in Glastonbury, you have 110 members. It's a wider suburb of Hartford area, but what experience do you have managing a call department?
Well, I've held every single rank in that department. So, 36 years, I've seen it change immensely. I mean, we were a farming agricultural community now that we're a suburban community. With 36,000 people, all our farms are now gone, and it's either been developed into office and medical complexes or multifamily, or have a couple hotels in my town. So I've seen a lot of growth, and as the growth comes changes that we've had to do to our organization. In addition, as I mentioned, I work for the academy, travel all across the state, teaching in the officer program and the instructor program. I also am an adjunct instructor at one of our schools. So, I've interacted with a lot of other fire chiefs, both call chiefs and career chiefs. So that's me. That's who I am, and I'm actively involved in our Fire Chiefs Association. I actually sit as the legislative representative for the Connecticut Fire Chiefs Association up at the Capitol.
Okay.
So,
And next part of this question is that given that call members you need to balance their work-life ratio outside of the fire department, in your vision, what would a recruitment, training, and retention program look like for attracting new firefighters, keeping and retaining existing firefighters, and continuous quality improvement with training?
recruitment and retention is probably one of the biggest challenges out there, anywhere, nationwide. If you look at it, lives are getting pulled in multiple directions. I just think about my own children. When I was growing up, baseball was only from April to June. Now it's year round, so it's a huge commitment for families. And when you also look at the requirements some families require 2 incomes in order to live in the communities. So my success rate is if I can have somebody for 3 years, that's a win for me. After what it cost me to put them through training, and if I get longer, that's even better. But it comes into a good, thorough recruitment process, interview process, kind of like what we're doing here, to making sure and giving them the story. This is what your requirements are going to be, and this is how long it's going to take you to train, and this is what our expectations are of you. So, a lot of people say, I don't want to do that. But as long as you're upfront and honest with them, and you work with them, and you try to mentor them, and you try to put them with a mentor to get them ingrained into the community and teach them, we've been successful with that. We also offer incentives. So when I look at my incentive budget, it's about $500,000 that we're paying for members to go to training to respond to calls. And in our state, we're allowed to give a tax relief. That's one way. Another way is what they call a LoSAP plan, like some type of retirement plan. But that's kind of difficult to sell to somebody that's younger, that doesn't really think that I'm going to be retiring anytime soon. I just want my money and then go buy the new toy that I want. So that's where we've been successful. But I will say that what I'm seeing now nationwide is that recruitment is very hard. The retention's easy. So like a lot of my members, we've given them a tax abatement for life if they hit certain hurdles. Now those hurdles are 25 years of service and they reach a certain age at 55. So when I look at that, there's a lot of us that are, I'll be in that bucket next year. So that's my retention tool for a lot of people. The younger group, that's a different story. So I need to be creative in how I figure out how am I going to get them. It's also thinking outside the box. I'm surrounded by 2 career departments that don't offer or take volunteers. So I've also brought in people that live close to our borders to be members of our organization. Some of them have aspirations of being a career chief. The first thing, career chief, yeah, being a career firefighter. Some of the things I tell them is, this is just a stepping stone. This is not going to get you hired, but this is going to tell you what the job is about. And a lot of them will go on and get jobs with career departments, whether it's in Connecticut or another state. So
I just have one follow-up question. Something that you said was very interesting is that you said that keeping people for 3 years is a win for you, and that given the amount of investment and time that you put in for new recruits, can you share with us like your experience and what the attrition rate was like at your current department, and how did you deal with that?
So I'm probably, if you look at my department, the greatest percentage of members are over the age of 30. I have a small group from 18 to 29. So a lot of them have settled in our town, so they're not moving. We're the younger generation, including my own children. They're looking to move out, and they'll probably get a job, and then they'll already be looking for the next move. So what I've also done was people that were in the department at a much younger age, had their families, had to leave. I've gone out and said, hey, will you come back now that the kids have left? Come back and rejoin the organization. So it's 2 ways that I'm looking at it. The younger group, if I can get someone that moves into town that's going to live there for 3 to 5 years, at least I know I have them, and I'm kind of replacing them with, we have a junior program, 14 to 18-year-olds run through the Boy Scouts. It's like an explorer. We call it fire cadets. If I can get them into that 3 to 5 year range, that's a win. I've had them from 14 to 18, so they've gotten some basic knowledge before we send them off to the regional school for their firefighter 1 and 2 certification. So that doesn't really cost me much over here, just time. And then I get them for 3 to 5 years. Then maybe once they settle down, have their family, and then the family moves on, I'll get them back at the end.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that. Appreciate the additional response. Colleen?
If you were shipwrecked on a deserted island and all of your human needs, like food and water, were met, what 2 items would you want to be left with?
I'd just say one, my wife. She's been with me through this for the last 27 years, and it's strange now. You know, we're now reconnecting. Now that my kids have grown and are out, we're finally getting to reconnect, and it's actually been fun. My youngest just left for DC for school, and we're now like semi-empty nesters. One moved out, one moved back home, but she's 22 off doing her own thing, and my 25-year-old, she's doing her own thing. So if I was shipwrecked, probably my wife.
You get one more thing.
Well, if I say it, you'll laugh at me, but I want the Yes Network so I can watch my Yankees.
That is unfortunate.
So
That's the no network around here.
All right. Thank you. All right, Matt?
I'm wondering how you address morale issues, both short-term and long-term.
it's funny. I've been doing this now. I break it down into the 10, 10, and 80 rule. I've got 10% of my people that go above and beyond. Can't ask any more from them. 80% are just there. I focus all my time on those 10% troublemakers. And it took me a long time to realize that you're not going to make everybody happy. And if you think you're going to sit in this seat and make everybody happy, you're going to lose out. You're going to fail. So, you know, individuals are it's tough as a manager. And I think when I sit back and you get frustrated at certain individuals, I do lately, as I matured, say, you know what, there's some good in there. This person just didn't sign up just to be in trouble. You know, what's the real good? And you try to get to the core root of what the issue might be. And some people, they may get on the train, they may not. And no, I'm not going to waste my time. I mean, as an organization, we need to move forward and focus on the 90% of the people, those 10 that will give you 110 and keep going and ask for more, and then they got 80s that are just going to be there. They're consistent, and you would only hope that those other 10% that like to be the thorns in your side will either catch on and hop on the bus or train, or they're going to get off at the next stop. So, but that was a hard lesson for me, to be honest with you, because I'm a person that I want to please everybody and I want to be well liked. But when you get into the top seat, yeah, it's lonely at the top. But that's what I signed up to do.
So just a follow-up question on that. Can you think of a specific example where one of those 10% troublemaker, the poison for the morale, right? That they're in every organization. I'm wondering if you can think of a specific example of, how you managed a situation.
It's just having conversations with them or her. Brought the individual in my office. Told them we can agree to disagree. But at the end of the day, and it goes back to the mission statement and your core values, if I can tie that back in to show that individual where they're missing the boat and not honoring when they raise their right hand and take an oath, the mission statement and core values that we've established as an organization, maybe this isn't the organization for you to be a member with. Maybe you want to go join another group or whatever. So yeah, I've had those situations, and you try, and my wife actually nicknamed them as I was Charlie Brown and that individual was Lucy. If you remember Charlie Brown and Lucy, every time Charlie Brown went to go kick the football, Lucy would pick it up, and so
Charlie Brown was a cartoon. I read the Sunday paper. I know who Charlie Brown is.
So anyhow, so that's,
He's a funny guy.
but that's learning. That was a tough tough for me as a new leader when I first got there.
Thank you.
As I get mature, I just realized it's not worth it.
Doreen?
Okay. It's in Grafton's interest to maintain a hybrid department as long as possible. So, first question, it's a two-part question. Do you have experience with transitioning to hybrid? And then the second part of the question is, how should the new chief integrate the call firefighters with full-time staff, keeping the department motivated, engaged, and retained?
So if you don't mind me asking, when you say hybrid, my understanding is right now that Grafton only has one full-time person. Are you telling me that
Right.
there's more right now?
No.
Okay. Is that something that you're looking to go towards? I'm a little confused by the question when you say hybrid.
So, as the department grows, let's
Yeah.
say over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years,
Okay.
and goes from a majority on-call department to more and more full-time employees or staff within the department, how would you handle that? How would you maintain the relationships between the on-call and the full-timers as they came in?
So, I'll tell you what I did where I'm from and step it back a little bit. If you're saying you need full-time people because you're seeing call volume not getting answered because you don't have the staffing, what I implemented was a per diem program, part-time people that came in within our own organization that worked Monday through Friday. And it's on a rotating basis. It was open up to every member of our organization. They wanted to do that. Now, where does that come into play? If you have members that are landscapers, their slow time is the winter time, unless it's snowstorm. So maybe they can pick up some of those shifts during the day. Or you have college students that are home during summer breaks that they're going to pick up some of the calls. They handle the nuisance calls, things like that. When you ask me, do I have experience running a combination department? No, I don't. I have none outside of the per diem program that I implemented 6 years ago that has been successful. I'm proud to say that probably out of the 6 years that I've been running it, maybe 20 days I didn't fill with somebody working Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30 to basically answer the nuisance calls or to do some of the other ancillary items that go along with running a fire department. When you go to the career versus volunteer, that's a culture shock. And that's something that everybody needs to be embrace and get involved. And I think when you look at where you are today, it's getting them to see why we're going there and to integrate it into the community. Now, where the problem becomes training. I have an issue with that because if you're going to have career staff and call staff, they need to work together. So how do you train? So that becomes a little bit of an overtime concern to me, because if you have a call department, they're either training, go my own department, nights or weekends. Is the town going to support having a budget that you're going to bring those career people back in to train with the volunteers? Because it's got to be cohesive. You got to create that team atmosphere. So that's a whole nother challenge, that baby steps in implementing, but making sure that everybody within the town is on board with that, to understand that that's a culture change. It's a huge culture change. But if you can't make that cohesive connection, it's not going to work. So
Thank you.
I don't know if I answered your question to
you
the
did.
best it is, but that's a huge change, and that's getting buy-in. And again, hopefully people are open-minded and they can see why you're doing that. I mean, you've got to have the data and the facts to back it up. I mean, if the apparatus aren't rolling out the door, I don't care if your feelings are hurt. We're there to protect the citizens of Grafton. They want to see a fire truck show up. They don't care if you're career or volunteer. They just want to have their problem taken care of. but you have to understand that we have to work together as a team, collaboratively. Because now you're getting down a whole nother path with union contracts and union rules compared to maybe fire department bylaws that you need to have them all on one page, so.
Okay. All right, Ray?
Chief, have you seen the Grafton Fire Study Committee findings and recommendations?
I saw some of it. I will honestly admit I'm not well versed on it at this point. I mean, I would need to do a much more thorough, in-depth analysis of it.
Okay, so based on what you've seen, what do you believe would be the greatest challenges of,
Well,
that you face as a fire chief?
having been involved with this 25 years ago, what you're going through now, and I'll be honest with you, I'm a little alarmed. The fact that when I've gone through this whole process, I haven't met anybody from the fire department or the existing chief to understand where they're coming from. And, you know, when you look at the research that when the committee was put together, no one in the fire department even knew that this was going on. So that's a little alarming to me when I look at that.
Can you explain that again? You lost me there. What fire department didn't know what was going on?
So I read an article back in March of 2021 when they put the search committee together. There was an article written in the Grafton paper, found it on the internet, that said that members of the fire department didn't know that there was a search committee going on for the fire chief position. So my concern is when you ask me what do I know about the study, and then also the prior chief not being part of this, I think that's concerning to me, and I'll tell you why it's concerning me. Because 25 years ago, we didn't want a full-time fire chief in my department. We didn't have any input, and that was a struggle for that individual that came through the door. So when I look at that, I want to make sure that everybody within the organization, this is where they want to go. This is where they see the need to go as an organization. I understand why it's important to have a full-time fire chief, because I've been doing this now for 12 years. There's a lot of things that go on, plan reviews, budgeting, personnel issues. To be a call fire chief or a week chief, it's a lot of work. So what I saw about that is where I was a little bit concerned about just reading that lately.
Peter, can I follow up?
You sure?
Do you perform critiques?
What do you mean? Like incident critiques?
Incident critiques.
Oh, yeah.
And you do that, can you just explain that to me? Who gets involved and what the outcome, what is the outcome that you expect?
Well, first of all, there's two types of critiques that we implement, or that I implement. We call a tailboard critique for those less critical incidents, where when it's over, we've mitigated, everything's done. We'll sit back, what went right, what went wrong, where can we improve? Tailboard critique. Take it back to the firehouse, let's talk about it. We do a formal critique, and we have a policy that's set up that if we have an incident, that the following Thursday, we have a full-blown critique of the incident, which involves those that were at the call. We get photos, we get recordings of our dispatch, and I have an outside person that wasn't involved that serves as the moderator of the incident, and we basically go through the same steps. What went well, what went wrong, where do we need to improve, and how are we going to get there? And then we document that critique as a training tool. So those are how we do our critiques in my organization.
Any follow-up questions?
No, I'll keep going, but I don't have to.
It's not
Let me have-
follow-up.
Go ahead, Colleen.
So you hold a lot of certifications in Connecticut. Do those all transfer through state lines, or would you have to be recertified in some of those areas?
I don't have to be, there should be reciprocity, although I'm a fire officer 4 here. What I'm told is that the state of Massachusetts does not recognize a fire officer 4. It's CFO that's held at, I believe it's Stowe, where the regional or your fire academy would be. So, that's depends on what your certification levels and what you're looking for. I mean, there's nothing that says I have to be recertified as a firefighter or anything on those lines. But if you're looking for more certification, then we need to discuss that. But I'm at the top level right now, with the exception of going to the executive fire officer program in Emmitsburg, which is a 2-year program. That's one of my aspirations to do in the very near future, once COVID is finally done and gone, hopefully. So, but I don't believe you're not requiring any other types of certification, are you?
Let me just tell you why I asked that question. I'm a hygienist. I can't just go to Rhode Island and clean teeth. So I just wasn't sure if your certifications go across state lines as well.
I know Massachusetts will accept up to Fire Officer 3 through the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA, based on the standard that's been established. I know Fire Officer 4, they don't recognize it here in Massachusetts. It's a CFO. It's not necessarily required, but.
Any other questions?
I have one. So, Chief, you've been on the job for 36 years, a long time. So let's just hypothetically say that you're on the job for another 10 years. What do you want people to say about you when you retire?
That I did my job to the best of my ability, and that I found it. I'm leaving the department better than what I found it, and that we're being progressive and that we've moved forward.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Go ahead.
Chief, how do you feel about relocation?
Well, that's a given.
Okay.
I mean, I can't be an effective fire chief 24/7, 365 if I'm living 67 miles away from here in another state. Something happens in the middle of the night, I need to be there within a very reasonable time frame. So you might ask me what's reasonable. Within no more than 30 minutes. Need to be back here.
Great. Thank you.
Chief, do you have any questions for us?
The process, I mean, I looked at the agenda. Would there be an opportunity to meet with the membership or whoever this person is before an offer is made or anything like that?
I think that's something that this board could possibly discuss after we're done concluding the interviews, but I think that's something that we can consider as a board. Absolutely.
Okay.
I don't think that's impossible.
Okay.
Yeah, but we would have to have that discussion and determine
Could-
we want to move forward.
The reason why I asked, I want to go back to Mr. Mead's point, and Mr. Often about social media. You see a lot of things out there, and I've lived what you're going through 25 years ago, and it's a culture shock for any organization that has been predominantly relying on paid on-call, not paid, on-call people. We call it paid on-call in Connecticut, but on-call people. It's a huge culture shock, and you want to get the right person that's going to be a good fit for this organization. The gentleman that we had came out of Pennsylvania, and it wasn't a good fit, but the membership never even met him until the day he raised his right hand. So that's why I asked the question before making a decision, because I have to make sure it's right for me and my family. I also want to make sure it's right for everybody here, that you got the best person for the job that's going to do the right thing for Grafton. So.
Okay, yeah, we can consider that in further discussion. Was there anything else that you have for us?
I would just like to thank each and every one of you for allowing me to come up here and to have the opportunity to share a little bit about who I am. And I thought this was a very interesting process, probably one of the more extensive processes that I've gone through as I changed from the private sector to get back into the public sector and doing public safety. I thought it was a very well done, thorough process. So I commend you for doing that. So, no,
Well, thank you very much for coming out, Chief. And
Yeah.
I just want to say, on behalf of us and all of us in Grafton, we appreciate the lifelong service and commitment you have to being a first responder and being there when we need you the most. And we look forward to following up with you based on our deliberations and decisions later today.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief.
Thanks so much.
All right, let's just take a few minute recess and then.
All set?
Good evening, Chief Valentine. How are you today?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining us. Just want to talk about the process real quick. Each of us are going to ask a question. We're going to rotate down back and forth between us. So each of us will ask a couple of questions in order. We may have some follow-up questions based on your responses, and so they will. Each one of the members will just ask to have the floor, just to ask that question. So before we go through, just want to introduce myself. My name is Peter Carlson, I'm the chair of the Select Board.
Colleen Roy, I'm the vice chair.
Matthew Lofton, I'm the clerk.
Doreen DeFazio.
Ray Mead.
Nice
And-
to meet you all.
Nice to
Nice
meet
to
you
meet
too,
you.
Chief.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, and thank you again for coming out. So, without further ado, I'm going to start off with the first question here. And the first one is, what prompted you, Chief, to apply for this position here at Grafton, be the first full-time chief?
I started in Rhode Island in the Cumberland-Lincoln area. I took the job as chief in December of 2019 in Groveland. It's 90 minutes away from family. So when my wife and I saw this job, we saw it as an opportunity to move closer to home.
Okay. Thanks for calling.
What do you know about the town of Grafton and the Grafton Fire Department?
Speculation or rumors?
All of it.
There are no rumors in the fire service.
Give us the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
I'm finding that it's a similar process that I went through in Groveland. When I went to Groveland, it was the Groveland Fire Department, but two stations, Central Station and South, and they were kind of separated. So I had to go through the process over the last 2 years of bringing them back together as one department. And my understanding is you got a similar situation here with 3 stations. They do 3 separate fundraising, 3 separate training, and you can't really have that. It's not going to be successful unless you get them all in the one department, one mission, one team atmosphere.
Any question? All right, great. Matt?
Thanks. I'm wondering, based on what you know about Grafton and our fire department, why do you think you'd be a good fit as a fire chief?
I come through the growing pains in Rhode Island. I was one of the first full-time firefighters in the department in Albion. They had a full-time chief. They added 2 full-timers, and we went through growing pains. Back then, they did about 400 or 500 runs a year, and as the town expanded, so did the fire service. When I retired as the deputy chief in Rhode Island, they were doing close to 2,000 to 2,500 calls a year, and there was 6 full-timers and 20 call firefighters. When I went to Groveland, I was the first hired. Since I got hired, through a SAFER grant, we've added 2 more full-timers. So now we're running 3 full-timers Monday through Friday and 30 call firefighters. And I see expansion coming there also due to some incoming apartment complexes, and like every town, growth.
Thanks.
All right. Doreen?
Hi, Chief. What do you believe are the most important qualities that are necessary for the next fire chief to possess?
Honesty, integrity, and trust. I have to come in and be honest with them. I have to have my integrity so I can gain their trust.
Thank you.
Okay. Ray?
Chief, so hypothetically here, you get appointed to this position. What would be your first steps in the first month and in the second, in 3 months to 6 months? What do you want to accomplish?
First month, it would be to instill the confidence in every member to become one team, not 3 separate teams. 3 to 6 months, come in with a positive attitude every day. Show them that I'm going to lead by example. Get them to want to be part of the one team, to train together, sit with the command staff, get them motivated by that positive attitude, and then the firefighters will follow.
Do you follow up, Colleen?
So in the first 30 days, you envision getting 3 stations to work as one. Can you give me one example of how you would do that?
It's the team atmosphere. I got to bring that in. I'm a hockey fanatic. I always put hockey and firefighting as one. Hockey is a fast-paced, quick decision-making. You can't do it alone. You have to have a team. Firefighting's the same way. So you got to bring that whole team concept in with a positive attitude and talk to them on a daily basis. Motivate them to want to get that one team. It took me in Groveland just about 45 days, and they started falling in where they were looking forward to Tuesday night's training because they were doing it together. They were looking forward to getting together for their annual fundraiser instead of 2 separate ones. Unfortunately, COVID hit, so we did the training together instead of fundraising, but it still all worked out.
Okay. Any follow-ups on that? No? All right. What role should the next fire chief play in the community?
Any department head, and especially in the safety department, you have to be part of the community. After becoming fire chief in Groveland, I did my probation during the pandemic. Once I was done that, I was involved with the community as much as possible. They have Groveland Days. They just got that back this year after missing it in 2020. I spent the entire day there, being seen, meeting people. Now that the pandemic's, hopefully, knock on wood, starting to slow down a little bit, and we can start doing more stuff, I want to do an open house and invite everybody in, do a fire prevention thing, get to meet people, and finally get to meet the chief. So that would be one of the first steps here. I wouldn't have to wait 2 years, I'm hoping. No more pandemic.
Okay. Colleen?
How accessible should the fire chief be to members of the community, members of the department, and how would you accomplish this?
It's coming from the call department. I started out as a junior firefighter when I was 16. I've been part of the call department my whole life. So in Groveland in 2020, I made 93% of the calls. Right now I'm on pace at 89% of the calls. I don't miss training. I'm in there all the time. They know my cell phone number. They call me. I meet them at the station. The community, I got a department cell phone. It's right on the website. If you need to talk to the chief, this is his work phone number, call it. I've had people call me at 1 o'clock in the morning and tell me they don't want all the fire trucks there because it's the bad battery. It just needs to be changed. And I've got up, gone and changed the battery and gone home, and the rest of the personnel didn't even know I went. It's customer service. Fire service, you have to do that.
Before I ask my question, I just want to ask a follow-up on that one that I've been asking all the chiefs. How do you feel about community engagement and social media?
I think it's got its positives. It's also got its negatives. So you have to have a policy on the social media. It's great to put out positive stuff. So we're going to be doing this for the community and that, but nothing negative is allowed to be put out by any of the personnel.
Thank you.
All right.
So the question that I had was, I'm interested in mentoring. So, you know, who were your mentors and what was the process as you were evolving in fire service? And, you know, what kinds of programs and initiatives would you contemplate bringing into Grafton in terms of mentoring your subordinates?
I learned years ago as a junior firefighter, I had my first chief was Earl Andrews, who was a great leader. He had a son, Bruce Andrews. Bruce was a captain when I first joined as a volunteer, and he was one of those old-fashioned, take the new guy under his wing and teach him everything. Just as I got the job in Groveland, he passed, and he told me that I made him proud because I had gone through the ranks. That's what I try to do. I started a junior firefighter program back in Rhode Island, and there's several that are now full-time firefighters throughout Rhode Island in the cities of Providence, Pawtucket, Central Falls that started out under me, and I take a lot of pride in that. Hitting the high school, getting some 16 and 17-year-olds in, and teaching them. You recruit them, so you get them for a few years. A couple of them you retain because they don't want to make it a career, and a couple you lose because they go on and make firefighting a career. They end up in the Worcesters, the Bostons. But a few of them you get to keep.
Thanks.
Oh, okay. Doreen?
How will you convey your vision of the department's mission and values with the members of your department?
The first thing I would do is meet with the command staff and let them know my expectations and find out what their expectations are. Then I would meet separately with the firefighters and let them know that you don't need bugles. I'm sure you're aware that firefighters have bugles. The more bugles you have, the higher rank. Firefighters have a cluster, they don't have bugles yet. And you don't need bugles to be leaders. I encourage everybody to mentor the new people coming in, work together to learn different aspects of the job. And that's my vision of pushing everybody forward. I find that if you work as a team and you mentor as a team, it brings out the best in everyone because everybody has their different ways of doing it, and you find the best way out of everybody.
Thank you.
I have a follow-up question for you, Chief. We're talking about establishing a mentorship and encouraging people to be leaders regardless of rank. Can you give us an example of where you've implemented that and just kind of, can you share the outcome that you had when you first?
When I first started in the fire service, they had the senior man. If you listen to the bigger cities, like especially FDNY, 9 out of 10 of the firefighters don't even see the officer. They go to the senior man. And I've implemented that in Groveland, where I took the senior firefighters and I told them, teach the new guys, teach the younger ones that'll come in. And they see that you're giving them that leadership, they jump at it and run with it.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, Ray?
Chief, have you seen the Grafton Fire Study Committee findings and recommendations?
I have. I haven't read it completely. I've read some of it. I know that the recommendation was to hire a chief, a fire prevention captain, and a training officer.
Okay, so my question actually relates to multiple stations, and each with their own MOs. No procedures in place, and if there are procedures they're not adhered to. Obviously, you have experienced this situation, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, you did talk about how it was resolved, but I'm gonna go off a little bit here. You came in, and tell me if I'm wrong, with a preconceived thought of how the Grafton Fire Department operates.
Yes.
Now, I'm not done.
Okay.
Did you base that on the findings and recommendations of the Fire Study Committee, or did you base that on what you've heard?
I base that on, believe it or not, I don't have one. I don't like it. My wife, however, has a Facebook, and I went on her Facebook and went into, and I found Grafton South, Friends of Grafton South Fire, Friends of Grafton North Fire, and nothing on headquarters. And starting to look at that, they were talking about how they did these things, and they never mentioned the other stations. And then, of course, you have the grapevine in the public world. We have the fire wire, and rumors fly. Even in Rhode Island's 10 times worse because it's such a small state. Even the bigger states like Massachusetts, you hear rumors. And as soon as I mentioned that I had put in for the Grafton job, I got more people telling me, oh, that's a bee's nest, they got this. So the fire wire is just as bad as the grapevine.
So you got word that it's a bee's nest, that it's this, that it's whatever it was.
Correct.
You're sitting here,
Yes, I am.
so you have a solution.
I would think that I have a solution.
So
It
tell
worked
me-
in Groveland. I don't know if it works everywhere.
You may have already said this, but tell me again what you think the solution is.
You have to get them to buy into the one team, and that is the leadership has to do it, and then you have to sell it with motivation. And the motivation that you give them is the team effort. You come in and you sit down and you put everything on the table, as far as if you've got 5 personnel sitting there and they're all giving their opinion and you want their opinion, they feel part of the team. So they're more motivated to be part of it because command is listening. The command staff is listening. You got to get your officers on board to do it, which I did in Groveland. And then the firefighters joined in when I had my separate meeting with just the firefighters and told them that they were leadership also. Even though they didn't have bugles, they were leadership also. And I wanted to hear their ideas. And when they noticed that their ideas were being listened to by the command staff, they got excited. They wanted to be part of that one team concept, that one mission.
Okay.
I think the team concept brings the best out of everybody because you get different ideas. Everybody needs to be willing to try.
Yep.
Chief, so I've got a couple of questions here, but they're all related. But just first tell us, like, what is your general experience today with call fire departments?
My whole life. I started as a call firefighter. Matter of fact, when I started as a junior firefighter, I didn't even know they paid you at the end of the year. When the chief called me in the office, I thought I was in trouble. And actually, he was congratulating me because I was the most active guy in the department. Back then, it was a couple of bucks a call. I came up through the ranks as a call firefighter to lieutenant. Right after I got promoted to lieutenant on the call side, I got a full-time position. I stayed within the town. The town of Lincoln has 4 different fire districts. I started out in the Salesville Fire District as a call firefighter. I went to Albion full-time. And I stayed in Albion for 28 and a half years. And then when it was time to retire, I took a job as a call fire chief up in Groveland. It was the first full-time position in Groveland. It was a 100% call department before that. And then, like I said, over the past 20 months, I got the Safer grant to add 2 firefighters, because Monday through Friday is extremely difficult to get call firefighters. They're all at work.
Yeah.
Nights and weekends are a little bit better. Although, as calls volume goes up, it's more difficult to get them.
Let me-
Here is a little different, which I noticed through your report that you mentioned, is not a lot of EMS calls here. In Groveland, I have an issue with coming back for EMS calls. They say the word fire, everybody shows up. EMS calls, it's a little more difficult to get them to respond, and I'm trying to find a different way to motivate that.
I want to ask, do you want to ask a follow-up to that?
Just a quick question. You mentioned when it was time to retire. What did you mean by that?
When I retired from Rhode Island.
Just Rhode Island, not
Yes,
fire
no, I didn't
service.
retire 100% from the fire service. Rhode Island does 30 years, and then you're maxed out. So I was at 28 and a half years, I was getting ready to max, so I started looking around.
Okay.
And when I was offered the job in Groveland, I retired from Albion, which I collect a pension from, plus my job in Groveland.
I see.
So my follow-up to understanding, your experience with call departments, understanding that call departments have a work-life balance, like, I think you've demonstrated that people at work call, it's
Correct.
difficult to get Monday through Friday during the day. What would your recruitment, training, and retention program look like for Grafton?
I think a great start is the junior firefighting program. That's what got me involved. When I was up till I was 15, the only thing in my world that mattered was girls and hockey. And then firefighting showed up and I had a new love. And I've been doing it since I was 16. I'm now 57, so I got 41 years, all call departments or combination departments.
And can you elaborate or share with me, like, what your retention program looked like? I mean, you were dealing with Groveland, which was a call department, but you were the first full-time chief.
Right. Like I had said before, if you get them in as a junior firefighter, they're going to fall in love with the job. Some of them have bigger aspirations. They want to be doctors, nurses, lawyers, so they stay with the call department because they love it. Others want to go to Worcester, Lawrence, Boston, and be firefighters. That's where you lose a few of them. So if you bring in 6 call firefighters, you're hoping that 50-50. 3 of them go on, 3 of them stay for a long period of time. And you get them, and it's their community, so they want to stay in their community.
All right, great. Thank you.
If
Call.
you were shipwrecked on a desert island and all of your human needs were met, like food and water, what 2 other items would you want to have with you?
My wife and my granddaughter. My wife's the love of my life, and my granddaughter's taken over.
All right. Matt?
I'm wondering, in your experience, how in the past have you addressed morale issues? So, you've been on Facebook, you've seen some of the grapevine information out there. Grafton's in transition.
Yep.
There's going to be a change of leadership. I'm wondering specifically how you're going to, keep things positive and keep the morale up, both short and long term.
Short term, I'm going to have to listen to the firefighters. I'm sure, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure there was a couple of internal members that applied for this position. So they're not going to be overly happy that they didn't get the position. So I'm definitely going to have to talk to them and keep them motivated that the future is still bright. Long term, it's just my attitude. It's a positive attitude. I come back to all calls. I try to be part of the community, and whenever I get some free time, I'm in the station. Ask my wife. She'll tell you.
Thank you.
All right, Doreen?
Okay, it's Grafton's interest to maintain a hybrid department as long as possible. Do you have experience with transition to hybrid? And the second part of this question is, how should the new chief integrate the call firefighters with any full-time staff, keeping the department motivated, engaged, retained? You sort of answered this question already, but in terms of, a full-time chief or anyone else who's full-time, along with a call department, and just, the difference in the two, and as perhaps over the next 5, 10, 15 years, more and more full-time staff need to be put on the department. How do you sort of maintain that collaboration between the entire department?
When we did it in Rhode Island, and I was one of the first full-timers, every time we made that decision, we sat down with the whole department. And I would go to the department and say, we're having some issues. I want to cover weekends also, not just Monday through Friday. So I want to split it and possibly do a 4-on, 4-off during the day, and then at nights continue with the call department. And let them be part of the decision making and how it's going to work. Also, in Groveland, I kept it internal. Because they're part-time call firefighters to a full-time position, you can hire them internally. So now they've got something to look forward to if you're going to start expanding, and they know that they've got a chance to make a career of it in their community. That's what held me in Lincoln my whole life. Was I got promoted to full-time status, and I did, of my 41 years, the last 2 have been in Groveland. The first 38 were in Lincoln.
Great, thanks.
Any follow-up? No? Okay. Ray?
Can you tell me a little bit about your critique procedure?
My critique, in other words, after a call, or?
Yes, after a call.
After action conversation. We look at the overall incident. We sit down. First do engine, we'll discuss what happened. Second do engine, we'll discuss how things went. Looking for ways of improvement. And it's never criticizing, it's constructive, positive, motivate. And you missed that hydrant, but you got this hydrant. Even though we had to lay an extra 500 feet of hose, we still got the job done. We just got to realize what's the closest hydrant. Maybe better communication of, listen, I got a hydrant closer. The first do ladder, what specifically their job is as far as, is there any reports of traps? They go right to work for search and rescue. If there's no reported traps and they know that nobody else is in there, they're gonna go to ventilation and property preservation. Then we just discuss how things went and how can we improve on it.
So do you do that after every call, or do you do that just after major calls?
The definition of major call. If it's a medical, no. If it's a bad car accident, yeah, by all means, we're gonna sit down and discuss it. Even if it's a brush fire, let's discuss how we can contain it and get home quicker. Every house fire, yes. Whether it's a small kitchen fire contained to the oven, or it's an all-out structure fire, we should sit down and discuss it after every call. And again, improvements. See how we can improve.
Peter, can I just, one more?
You go ahead.
Do you do truck assignments?
No, I train for everything, so that way everybody wears every hat in the station. So if they come in and it's the engine going out to the call, they can all, the first 3 or 4 can jump on the engine, and the next 3 or 4 don't stand there and say, well, I'm on that engine, take the ladder. I found it doesn't work in the call departments, that they have to train on every truck.
Okay. And what do you believe will be the greatest challenges that you'll face as Grafton Fire Chief?
Overcoming some of the feelings that may have gotten hurt in this process because they didn't get put through the whole process and possibly considered for the job. If there is a morale problem, you got to bring the morale up to get everybody back in that positive go, go, go mode.
Does any of the board members have any follow-up questions that they would like to ask Chief?
I just have one. Yeah, you mentioned a 93%
Yes.
attendance rate to incidents. I'm wondering, as a full-time chief, how you balance the on-call, hands-on responder responsibilities with your administrator responsibilities.
Monday through Friday, I do administration and go to calls. Nights, I answer pretty much everything, as you can see. I call my wife the love of my life because she's the most understanding person I've ever met. She puts up with me sitting in front of the computer at home doing stuff. If I go to a call and she knows it's a 20-minute call and I'm there for an hour and a half, she'll call me and say, "You get lost in the paperwork again." She upped and moved 90 minutes away from her family to support me going to Groveland 2 years ago. So she's pretty incredible when it comes to this. And since the day she met me, I've been chasing fire trucks.
Thank you.
Colleen?
Are you currently attending CCRI? I saw that 90%. I wasn't sure if that was something you're actively following.
No. When I moved up to Groveland, I had stopped going to CCRI. If I was to come here, I would probably go back because it's a little closer. It's only 30 minutes from here instead of 90 minutes. I am currently, though, in the Massachusetts Fire Academy CFO, the Chief Fire Officer class, which is developed and delivered by UMass, the Collins Center. So it's all about municipal law, municipal leadership, and management style. We were just discussing with the first gentleman that came in. He had taken it a couple of years ago, and he was discussing his 20-page research paper that he had to do that I'm in the middle of doing now. And they say that's equivalent to an associate's degree without math, science, and social studies.
Any other follow-up questions? Doreen?
Chief, I've asked every other candidate this, and I think you've already answered it again, but how you feel about relocation. I think that was one of the reasons why you had initially put your
That's why
hat in the
put
ring,
for
and
this,
so
yes.
you'd be willing to relocate
Yes.
closer to
My wife's
Grafton.
already started looking for house.
Great, thank you.
I got one more. Gene.
Go ahead, Ray. Yep.
When you retire, what do you want people to say about you? Or what will people say about you?
Fair, respected, and loyal.
Okay. Any other questions on the board? Chief, do you have any questions for us?
No, I don't. I did the research. Some of it, I'm sure, wasn't overwhelmingly happy to hear, but that's the fire service. We're a strange bunch. We don't like things the way they've been for the last 25 years, and we don't like change. Try to figure it out, keeping us happy. I thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to hearing from everybody.
Well, I appreciate that, Chief, and I just want to say on behalf of this board and this community, we want to thank you for your umpteen years of service to fire services first responder, and more importantly, thank you for your service and your years at the United States Air Force.
Thank you.
I just want to recognize that as your veteran status, and I just want to thank you. We're gonna, the process here tonight is, after we conclude here, we're gonna deliberate and discuss the three finalists tonight, and our objective is to come to a decision, and once we do that, one of us will reach out to you directly to notify
Excellent.
you. But we want to thank you very much for coming in.
All right, thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you, Chief.
Have a
Thank
great
you,
evening.
Pleasure
Chief.
meeting you all.
Nice
Handshake
meeting you
from
too.
far.
You want to take a few minutes break, or
Yeah.
can we just take a few minutes recess and then we'll come back? All right, thank you, everybody. We just came back from a quick recess here. Settled back down. On behalf of the board, I want to thank all three of the individuals that came in tonight. I want to just briefly summarize real quick. I thought the question and answer session was very, very informative. I really like the two-way communication that we had with all the candidates. I want to thank all of you for participating. So next up, what we want to do is let's go around and discuss, I guess in no particular order, if one member wants to start with their thoughts on the candidates. So I want to just open the floor up to the board. Doesn't have to go in alpha, but if anyone would like to go ahead and start and just kind of give their remarks, we can just start with that one and go down from there.
My eyes are watering.
You're not supposed to wear it with a mask.
So
I-
that side won't be
Okay,
starting.
so I guess
Go
I'm
ahead.
starting since that
You-
side's not starting.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to start with my overall thoughts, and we'll just go down the line, and I can loop back at some point. So, I thought all three candidates interviewed well. I think that I was surprised personally tonight because I have interviewed all three of these candidates before with the search committee, and I felt when we did a deeper dive tonight, I was able to see things in a different order than I would have previously. So I thought that was good. I'll start with Chief. Is it Valentine or Valentine? Do we know?
Valentine.
Valentine, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll start with him. He, and I'm just going to go off the questions. I'm not even going to get into anything else right now. I scored him relatively high. I really liked his collaborative approach, and he talked about customer service. And I overall feel like he would be a really good fit for Grafton. I liked his team concept approach a lot. I do have some more questions about his administrative abilities, perhaps compared to the other two candidates. So I would say, as a weakness, for lack of a better word, I'd want to hear people's opinions on that. But I thought overall he was a great candidate. And then Chief Thurs, I feel like when I first interviewed him, he was one of my favorite candidates. And I thought that from his resume and from the way he interviewed, and obviously his experience, he's got a ton of experience. And tonight in scoring, I was less apt to think he would be necessarily the right fit culturally for Grafton. I had a few smaller concerns just coming from a really big community, not experienced with a hybrid department, the fire study report, and a couple of his last questions, and he was asking other questions instead of answering the questions. So a couple of concerns there, but a very strong candidate with a great resume. And then in terms of Chief Legendre, I thought that he started his interview, he was clearly very nervous, and but his scores ended up going way up as we started getting into questions 5 and 6. I really liked his demeanor. I feel like his approach with the department would be really great. So that's just a very high overview of how I kind of scored the candidates. I would say I think I had Chief, well, I don't know because William has the scores. Oh, thank you. But I think I scored Legendre the highest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. And then Valentine's second and Thurs third, which wasn't my intention going in, like I said, compared to the first interview. So I think we did a good job asking questions and kind of diving down a little deeper. So I'll stop there and let someone else speak.
Thanks, Doreen. Who wants to go next?
I'll go.
All right.
So, 3 great candidates. really, really great candidates. Chief Lazandre, he was very nervous at the beginning, as Doreen said, and he relaxed. After about, I think, 35 minutes, he relaxed. I think one of the things that, and I'm gonna generalize over all three, is that the town spent money to do studies and then put together a committee, an internal committee, to do another study to determine what the department's needs were. Not the current condition or anything like that, but the department's needs. Not one candidate had gone into any one of those reports in depth. And I was kind of surprised at that. Because you would think that if there are reports out there relating to the fire department and how it's being run, or how it's, the first one was how it's being run currently. The second one was how we're gonna fix it, or how we believe we should fix this. And I was disappointed in all three that they really didn't put a lot of effort into that. So, that it kind of tells you that they all have their own path to success. But it also tells you, in my opinion, that even though they say they're going to listen, they didn't do their due diligence up front. So how much are they going to listen on the back? So that's a real concern of mine. Chief Legendre was asked about retention and recruitment 4 times. 4 times. And once he got comfortable, he brought up, a public education problem and get public input. Set up appointments to see him. That, in my opinion, doesn't relate to an open person. That relates to a person who sits behind a desk, and if you want to talk to me, you can make an appointment and I'll talk with you. I also look at that as, take that same person and put him out in the public, and that's the kind of aura he is going to portray. And again, just these are my opinions. You need to motivate. He was asked a question about mentoring. He did not answer the question. Mentoring in the fire service is a huge thing, and you need the right type of person to do that and to put that program together. And it also goes along with retention. That if you take a private and you mentor him with a lieutenant or a captain or a district chief or a battalion chief or whatever it is, they're going to learn more and they're going to get more interested in what the job is. And they're not just going to say, hey, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I don't feel like going to a CO call, I'm going to bed. So, they want to learn. Let's see, and I feel bad about this, but I did not ask him about critiques, and I feel bad about that. He did train every week. Social media, stuff like that. He had a program. Once he got comfortable, he told us about his program in Neshoba Regional, which is really good, and that he added 6 firefighters in 18 months. Good morale, communications, maintained a 10% response, so that you only have to make 10% of the calls. So I look at that and I say, if you only make 10% of the calls, then, and I'm not saying you need to get off, but how can we help you come to more calls? Is it because you're not learning anything, the training's not right, or, you know, all of this stuff that you have to go through? So, and as far as the ambulance goes, he was fine with that. He didn't have a problem with that. I had a real problem with the 37 to 40 hours a week. I had a real problem with that. And then I asked him about a backup. What's the backup plan? And there really wasn't one. So that was him. He's a hands-on guy. He'll pick up the hose and he'll run into a house. In my opinion, that's not a leader and that's not a chief.
Well, I mean, he is a chief, so let's not.
No. I'm talking. I know he's a chief.
Okay.
I'm not saying.
I know,
I'm not
but
saying
what you're
that's
saying,
not-
yeah.
What I'm saying is that's not a chief's job. So, Chief Thurs, absolutely, totally impressed with everything that he said until we got to the end. I think his critique program, and if you've never been involved in one, critiques are extremely important in fire scenes and in fire departments. It tells you what you did right, what you did wrong, and how we can do it better. And everybody gets involved. And he had a tailgate critique. He had a formal critique with a moderator, which I've never heard of that. That was great. Open door policy, civic events, 24/7. His explanation of morale, 10, 10, and 80, I thought was very impressive. Has a per diem program with existing members in team atmosphere, and that's a big thing, because if you have people who work 3 to 11 or 11 to 7 or whatever, and you want to put them on during the day at the regular rate, they're call guys. They respond to calls. They're available. A great program. It's a great program. But when we got to the end, and he said that he wanted to meet the department before he made the decision, very disappointing, in my opinion. Very, very disappointing. So in other words, you have to make sure that everything's okay in your mind before you come here. That's what I got out of it. Chief Valentine, another worker. He is an absolute worker. He's a firefighter. There's no doubt about it. I get concerned that he took a job after retiring in Albion or Lincoln and only committed 2 years to it, knowing that it was 90 minutes away from his family. I do have a problem with that. Doesn't have a big department. Honesty, integrity, trust, I totally 100% believe that. He is rough around the edges. There's no doubt about it. He makes 89% of the calls. You know, that's great. That's fantastic. The high school recruits, keeping in mind, he brought up the high school recruits, and the junior firefighter program started in Rhode Island. There is no junior firefighter program in Groveland. Teach with the senior men, excellent, excellent. Team concept, critiques, yeah, we might have them, we might not. I'll listen.
All right, anyone else want to go next?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the scores here, and of the 4 totals that we were given, we pretty much all aligned. 3 out of the 4 of us agree on 1, 2, 3. Our scores might not be the same, but we landed on the same people. Chief Thurs did come in number 1 out of 3 out of the 4 of us. And I know one of the standout comments that he made for me was that he would proactively go after a problem. He's not going to wait to be asked. He's going to, if he thinks something's going on or even just a part of the community, he's not going to wait to be invited. He just wants to be a part of it. And I think that's an important piece of this among all the other important pieces that people have already mentioned. Chief Valentine as well. I just, after we read the assessment, I think we knew what kind of personalities we were going to see, and I expected that personality. I just wish we got to see a little bit more enthusiasm, and that's just not him, and that's fine. And maybe that's the kind of chief Grafton needs right now. I'm not, that's all I really want to say right now. I just want to do a little more listening.
Anyone else? I'll go. So, even though my scores, as I was taking them down and evaluating each one of them, were subjective responses to questions in those initial responses, but if you were to compare all 3 of the candidates and using the score rubric as the one true faith, I think is doing a disservice to the community. I want to look at it in the perspective of, out of the 3, one totally stood out to me as someone who is technically able to do the job, someone who can come here tomorrow, really start implementing a lot of the plans without really a lot of direction. However, my concern with that individual, and that's Chief Thurs, was not only the way he responded to the last question, which to me was something that I really don't want to see a candidate tell us, I've got a demand for a job. I have some exceptions to that. To me, that is, well, why wasn't that part of the screening process? Why did that wait to come up at the very last minute? You did some Google searching and you read an article. I mean, was he not aware that he interviewed with 3 members of the fire department, one of which were command staff? Okay. Why wasn't that brought up, I guess, during the screening process? And seeing how that was come up to me, and I know we put him on the spot and asked him, hey, what questions do you have? And those were his initial ones. I was really looking forward to hearing some other questions other than the critiques. And I'm okay with taking criticisms, but you're an applicant, okay? And, if I went to my job and I says, well, I demand to see the P&L statement before I come to work here, they're going to be like, have a great day, Peter. You know what? Good luck in your career, right? I kind of felt that was the vibe I got. There were some other concerns, that I had with some of the other candidates, but I just want to finish on Chief Thurs. I have to say, with his 36 years of impeccable, work, he obviously, out of all of them, should score very high on the assessment center, okay, which was a result of his years of experience. I do feel that he is more set up in a structure that has already an established command structure in place. Granted, he went through this process 25 years ago, so he became, they went through this in his community. I felt that the other 2 candidates who just recently did this with both of their communities actually provides more current real-world scenario about making that transition in today. What the department was like 25 years ago, like you said, we used to just show up and fight fires. Today, it's a totally different ballgame. I think that was very enlightening for me that Chief Thurs was able to demonstrate that to me, and it made me go back and look at my notes between Chief Leger and Chief Valentine and say, out of those 2, I felt that they have the most relevant experience about coming to work with an all-call fire department and knowing that that's crucial and vital to maintain it. It's unfortunate that they only have a few years of experience, but they both bring something relevant to me to the table in that they've done this. They know what to emphasize and what to avoid. They already know what probably the top concerns are going to be from the department. I do like the approach of the communication. I think I heard that abundantly clear from all of the candidates, but from those 2 especially, they were very direct. They didn't have to beat around the bush. You have to have effective communication. You have to meet with the staff. You have to hear that. And I like the fact that they all talked about having a transition plan in place. Granted, it wasn't something formal. I don't think we were looking for that tonight. I think we were just looking, for me personally, I wanted to hear, did they at least acknowledge some sort of transition plan coming into the position? I will say that, if it were up to me, if it were between the 2 candidates, I would probably lean more towards, Chief Valentine versus Leger, just for the fact of, I'm looking at the years of experience, okay, and I'm saying to myself, I've got somebody who's been through the town of Lincoln, Rhode Island, and if you evaluate the town of Lincoln, Rhode Island, it's roughly the same size as Grafton. It's about 20,000 residents. It's a little bit more developed, so it's got a lot of the challenges that Grafton has currently today with providing fire services, but I think that where his role would fit in very well here is just his approach. It's a direct approach. It's not a beat around the bush type of thing, and I think this department needs that someone who's going to follow through. To your point, Ray, both of them are firefighters, and they both have good incident command. And you know what? And I want to just emphasize this, that if it's the chief and two other people who show up to a call and the chief needed to go in and do something, I want that chief to go in and deal with it. I want them to be, if they're trained in being a first responder, they can still perform the duties that are assigned, and that if there was someone's life on the line, I think we would all agree that if it came down to a chief who could go in there and do the job and actually pick up the hose or go in and pull someone out of a burning building or a car wreck, I would want that. I personally feel that that's a benefit to this community, and this community does also need the administrative side of things. And that's just something we're going to have to work towards and get whoever our next chief is up to par with those responsibilities. And I think that that's going to be crucial with how they build out the staff in the future. So they're going to be in a position where in the report, I like the fact that Chief Valentine actually did read some of the highlights in the report, I might add. Okay, so out of the three, and I sat on the committee with you, right? I'm like, he hit the top three things for me. It's like he understands that there were needs in certain department heads that this department in this town desperately needs. So, wow, I went on a rant there. So I'm going to take a step back here, and I think if Matt is ready to
Sure.
some comments, I'll hand the floor to you.
I don't know if my thoughts are as well organized as some of the other members, but I'll just shoot them some things out there. I'll start with Chief Valentine. Obviously, he was, kind of short on words, so that was a bit of a challenge because he didn't seem to really want to, with some of the answers, get specific, expound a lot. So I felt like I was just a little bit short on content to kind of evaluate. I didn't get an overly, I guess, powerful sense of passion for fire service as I did the other two guys. And, it's Tuesday night and kind of late, and we've all been here for a little while, and so it could just be that. But that was something that I sort of noted. And the sort of reason for coming here, I sensed a little bit of I don't know if there's a commitment to the town of Grafton or that this just was like geographically in a good radius from, where his family is. That was, so that was a bit of a concern for me, I guess. I was a little bit concerned about his answer to the critiques when he talked about evaluating house fires and whatnot. He said, you should always do that. But, what Grafton needs, I think, is for somebody to come in and make sure that that type of administrative action happens. So I had a little bit of a concern in terms of that, in terms of he didn't reference policy a whole lot. Chief Thurs definitely was more on the policy side of things, I think, coming from a more mature department. So I had a little bit of a concern in terms of that. I think that, Chief Valentine would be more on the response side than the administration side. And, when I think about what Grafton needs right now, it's a mix of different things. We if we look at the fire study, it prescribes that our full-time chief is going to be responding during the day. But in order to mature the department and sort of bring it from where it is today to into the future, I think we are going to need a chief that's committed to that administrative part of it, to building up that foundation of policy, building up that a more formalized kind of training and recruitment, and each of the chiefs brought their own take to recruitment and retention, and I thought that was really good to hear some of the different programs that they all had going on. But Grafton is, I wouldn't say we're starting from ground zero, but we have a lot of informal process and procedure, and so I think we're going to need somebody who has seen what good looks like, and can come in and implement that. So I respect Chief Valentine's experience, and I think he would be a good chief. He was sort of, for me, kind of my second choice. Chief Legendre, I think he was a little bit timid, a little bit hesitant. I didn't get that command presence from him that I expect from a fire chief. He relaxed a little bit throughout the interview, and that was good. He was extremely passionate about the fire service, and I really liked that. I liked he sort of, you could tell it just flows in his veins, and I really liked that about him. I liked his discussion about the mix of old and new fire techniques and operations and ways of working. I really liked, because I think Grafton is gonna need somebody who honors both. Somebody who has current education, who is looking to be a little bit more on the progressive side, but also recognizes that we have a lot of current firefighters in the department that have been with the department for quite some time, and were brought up really in a different era. So we've got to be able to kind of mix those things up. I liked his answer about call departments and how to manage those, the sort of flexible training schedule, the interns, the ride-alongs, public events and local media and whatnot. I was a little concerned that he didn't talk about a foundation of policy when we were talking about consistency across multiple stations. I think, to me, having that set of policies agreed and trained and practiced and enforced is a pretty key piece of it. So my Chief Thurs, to me, kind of rose a little bit of head and shoulders above the others. He's more on the administrative side, but I think that's good. I do think that's what Grafton needs right now. He had a very strong command presence. It was difficult, admittedly, to judge him against the other candidates because he's very well spoken. He's obviously in the private sector. He's, I think been either one of the principals in a regional bank, and so he's very well spoken. So that was kind of difficult to take the content and not the words, to just really get down to what it is that he was saying. But a lot of what he said I really liked. I liked his answer about, we're one department, but I want to foster pride in the different stations. I liked that. We're not looking to make everybody the same. We want to still honor some of the Grafton traditions. But at the end of the day, we all have to be one department operating the same way. Let's see. I didn't really like that he wanted to make sure the current department was fully on board with the transition. That just was a kind of a red flag for me, in the sense that you're here to help provide a vision and then guide the department in a direction. And I liked the fact that he said, I can't make everybody happy. So I think there was a little bit of realism in some of his answers that that I didn't get with some of the answers from a couple of the other chiefs. There's two major concerns that I have. One is that he's no real experience with call firefighters, and kind of managing that type of department. And also, I have a deep concern about the budget and what his expectations would be. So, obviously he's in a much bigger department. What are his expectations going to be in terms of the pace of Grafton's growing its department, and his expectations of what supports he's going to need to surround himself with to be successful. So, I don't know, for me, Chief Thurs was sort of top of the ones that I thought. I guess the last thing that I will say is we have Rob Pomeroy on the line here. I would like to hear if he has any. I'd like to hear his thoughts in terms of the assessment center outputs that we got, and if he has any information that he'd like to give to us.
Before we
Matt,
get to you, Mr.
just-
Pomeroy, was there any member of the board that wants to have another comment?
Yeah, just to talk about the budget, Matt. His budget is $300,000 less than Grafton's.
Yep, I made a note of that.
Okay.
Yep.
So I didn't know if you knew that.
I did have one comment about the Chief Thurs. I know his final answer seemed to rub some members the wrong way, and I just wanted to balance that with it. It seemed to kind of make sense to me, but that's kind of what I'm used to as a hygienist. We do working interviews where we get paid to come in and work a day to see if not only do we like the office, but does the office like us, and that's when we get the offer after that. And then that gives us a better idea of do we want to accept that offer. So to me, it wasn't a red flag at all, but it is interesting to hear that viewpoint from other members.
Well, it is very important that we go through this process and that one candidate who, in my opinion, outshone the other two. And I truly believe that this is somebody that the Grafton Fire Department needs. We need professionalism and we need somebody who's going to take care of us. But that puts us in quite a sticky wicket, as they say. That if he meets with the department and he doesn't like what's going on, we're back at square one. It's just not, I mean, I would love to offer him the job, but say, here's the deal. Either you take it, or you don't. You're not gonna meet with the department when you're not even a member of the department.
Well,
You do your due diligence. That's all.
I want to mention one other thing. I think Chief Thur's comments about attaining a different job, I think with the state of Connecticut, just something that stood out to me a bit. In other words, it wasn't maintaining, keeping being a fire chief. Wanted to move on. I believe he's
He's an adjunct instructor.
not the adjunct, but there was the next level beyond being, I think, a level 4 in state of Connecticut, and that is working for the state's Executive Office of Fire Protection.
He is the liaison to the state fire marshal.
But there is a position that he was wanting to attain that he said was also a lifelong dream of his.
Oh,
So,
I don't know. I don't remember that.
if you go back to the tapes, okay, you'll hear that very clearly, that there's other aspirations that Chief Thurs had mentioned during the interview process that I thought was, okay, does he want the job in Grafton? Or does, he wanted to go and take this job, and to your point, is he here for a year or two before he moves on to something else? And I guess that's the reality we live in regardless of who we choose. And I
Right.
know that shouldn't, dissuade us one way or the other, but I did want to mention that about Chief Thurs.
Yeah, if we
And we know that about the other two who've been in their positions for a year or two and are currently looking to move on. That's why they're
Correct.
here tonight.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that's a
Right.
guarantee.
Yep.
Yep. But they want to be chiefs.
Exactly.
Well, they are chiefs. They're all
They are
chiefs.
chiefs.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But I heard
just
from
don't like where
Thurs-
they are, chiefs.
I heard from
Right.
Thurs that he also wanted to do something else too. So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that. So before we get
Aspirations
to
are
Mr. Pomeroy, was there any other board member that wanted to bring up anything else before? Rob, how are you tonight?
Fine, how are you?
Good. So Matt had a question about the assessment process and wanted to just get your input.
Yeah, so it was an all-day event. All of the candidates arrived at 7:30 in the morning. I think we wrapped up around 3:30 or 4 in the afternoon. As you can see by the report, we had an on-site written exercise, a narrative exercise that they accomplished on site, which consisted of 2 management issues. And just so you are aware, so the way we work the assessment centers is that the assessors who came in, and they're all subject matter experts, they're fire experts. They know nothing about the candidates. They don't know their names. They don't know their background. They didn't see their resumes. They are anonymous during the process. So each of the candidates just had a number that they wore, 1 through 4. And to even add further to the anonymity, each of the candidates that wrote their paper, they gave me a 4-digit number, and this 4-digit number was the only number on their paper. So that even adds another layer of anonymity, so that at the end of the day, when the assessors evaluate those written papers, they can't even say, well, this is candidate 4's paper. 4 was great all day, and subjectively think their paper is great too. Or 4 was poor all day, and subjectively think his paper will be poor as well. So they have no idea whose paper they were evaluating, so it's blind grading. So they did that written on-site 2 management issues. Interesting, some of the candidates, they were told in advance that they could bring a laptop computer, some type, some hand wrote. They did a fire technical exercise, and what that had to do with was we have one of our subject matter experts put together depictions of a fire scene, several fire photos, and then a narrative description of a fire scene, along with resources that are available. And it was simulated. And we do that so that anyone who might have particular knowledge about Grafton wouldn't have an advantage during the assessment center. So we make it a neutral location with real buildings, but not buildings located in Grafton, just so it's fair for everyone. And the candidates get to study that book for 5 minutes, and they can make notes. And they come in and they have a whiteboard that's available to them, and they make a 10-minute presentation to the assessors on how they would handle that fire from start to finish. And then the assessors have several minutes of follow-up questions after that. We had each candidate come in, and they were only given a couple of minutes and told about a situation with a difficulty being experienced by an employee. And we had them meet with the employee who was one of the assessors, and had about a 12-minute meeting with that employee. And we told them to take whatever action they thought was appropriate. And that was followed up by what we call situational scenarios. And those are, rather than being fire technical exercise, those are all management type issues that we would expect a fire chief in a community such as Grafton to face. And, the fire end of the business is one thing, but we all know that when you rise to the level of chief, it's really management of personnel that becomes the most difficult thing. Actually, the fire is probably the easiest part of the business. Same thing with the police. The police work is the easy part of the business. It's managing the personnel that's difficult. So there was about 15 questions, basically, what would you do if? And they were hit with those rather rapid fire. And they were the type of questions you either knew them or you didn't. And then we gave them in advance an exercise to complete, where they were asked to, the scenario was that it's their first week on the job, and they have called for a department-wide meeting, and they were to address the department members. And we told them that they were to talk about their expectations, their philosophy, ethics, and so forth, and that if they discussed any of their personal history, that would not be taken into account in the scoring. Each candidate had 10 minutes to make that presentation. Most of them didn't use the time wisely. One candidate used his time almost completely. Others really didn't take full advantage of that and only used a few minutes, and then that's included in your report. And I don't want to say publicly about what the scores are. You have them in front of you. And then you also have some comments that were made by the assessors. Again, I'm not going to discuss those publicly, but I think the comments that the assessors made, I think you'll see that their insight into the candidate's performance was what you saw tonight. And I'll leave it at that. They all have different strengths and weaknesses, and I'll leave it at that to your discretion to discuss the candidates further.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
No, I just have some more comments, but that's all.
I'm good.
did you?
Yeah, I just have some more comments, and I'm gonna go back to Chief Thurs. You know, some of the things that we put in that the fire study committee report, he actually hit on. You know, the retention, recruitment and retention, the mentoring, they offer an incentive. This is one of the things that we put in our report, is to offer an incentive. They have a tax relief which goes through the town. They have a retirement plan. Those are all things that we, how long ago, Peter? A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we talked about. And here we have a candidate who actually has that in his department, and manages that. You know, I don't want to throw the guy out on the last statement, but I truly believe that the Grafton Fire Department needs professional management, and I think that Chief Thurs can bring it to us. I really do. I think he's the guy.
I agree.
Anyone else have any comments?
No, I agree with what Ray said. I think he was the one fire chief that I thought most clearly articulated a vision, and also how he was actually going to communicate and bring that vision into the department. And I really liked Chief Valentine, and I think he would be a great fire chief for a different fire department, but not necessarily what Grafton needs right now.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll speak up on this. It's interesting, and Peter, you brought this up too, and I like how you said this. So my scores, just question a question, don't necessarily indicate how I feel about each candidate. It was interesting to see my scores come through lower for him this time around, despite the fact that I know he's very qualified, and I think he'd make a great chief. Without a doubt, I feel like, you know, and Matt touched upon this, like, you know, the administrative experience is key here in Grafton, and he has that. I was a little concerned with, and Colleen brought this up in the opposite way of what I'm going to do, the spirited competition with different stations. I didn't like that. I liked the other two candidates and their more collaborative approach of we're one town, we're one fire department with 3 stations. And so that rubbed me the wrong way.
But
just
to be fair, Matt brought that up.
Matt
Yeah,
brought it
that
up,
was
not
fine.
you?
Yeah.
Okay. Not you? Okay. So at any rate, I just, I just didn't like that approach, and I was a little concerned at that point. I guess I'm, I want to make sure this transition is good for the current department, and his approach sometimes seemed a little abrasive, and I in one way I think like, wow, you know, he'd be great as we need like a commanding chief, especially in terms of if we have, God forbid, we ever have a really big emergency in our community. We want someone like that has that sort of confidence, and people are able to follow him, and we know that he's going to do a great job at it. On the flip side of that, I have some concerns on how the current department and the structure is going to follow suit to that. And for me, Chief Valentine seemed to have a better approach to that. Chief Legendre, I think, is not the right candidate for Grafton right now. I really appreciated his passion, and I think he would be long-term if he were offered the job, but I don't think that we could really take the chance right now of someone getting up to speed. And I feel like out of the three candidates, you know, just in terms of how he was, how he interviewed and how nervous he was, I do have some concerns there, along with what everybody else said. So in terms of Chief Thurs, I understand and appreciate this board's expectation of the job and seeing how that fits into him as an individual. I have a little bit of, you know, a couple concerns about it, but it doesn't mean I wouldn't be in favor of that. I guess the final thing I'll say is, you know, at the end, wanting to meet the department, not knowing that he interviewed with three other people from the fire department, and just saying he hasn't met anybody or talked to anybody from the fire department, and that simply isn't true. And so to me, I guess I started to get a little protective of our fire department, and just wanting to make sure that they're getting the leader that, you know, they deserve.
Can I just bring up respond to the competitive, and I just remembered this, to be honest with you, and maybe Peter, you'll remember this too. Is during that fire study committee, we interviewed two chiefs. We actually interviewed three chiefs, Holliston, Sutton, and Millbury. And the Millbury chief told us that they have 5 companies over there, and they train together all the time. It's a department-wide training, but that there is a competition between the companies, and he said that, and he said it's good. And you know, I remember him saying that, and I was surprised, because I always look at that and say, well, you're really together. But he said it was really good because they trained all together. So, but the competition between the companies was always there.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question, Ray?
Yep.
Is that similar to back in the past musters that would be attended? Is that like a training and some competition built into it, so it's kind of a fun collaborative day?
Well, yeah, you know, we had a muster team, and we were very good, and it was made up of all 3 companies. That was back in the early 70s, and up until like, I don't know, maybe 78 or something like that. But that was all made up of all 3 companies, and it was a good time. Yep.
Can I make one more quick point, Peter? This just has to do with Chief Valentine. He brought up more than once, and he actually brought it up in the interviews that we did too, all the successful grants that he has done for the department. And I like that and wrote that down a few times and appreciated that. So to me, what that says is, you know, conservative spending, and, you know, as we offer a job to a strong chief, I mean, that's something else. You know, the administrative side, the budgeting side is all very important, and I think Chief Valentine just used different words, and one of that was, you know, the grant writing. So that's all.
Any other comments on the board? Just one final thing I wanted to ask the board, and I think this is something, is like, what does this board hold most important for a new chief? I know we've asked a bunch of questions, but I want to share what mine is. Mine is a new chief coming here full time, successfully maintaining and growing a call department. That's my first primary. All of the other initiatives that the fire study committee went down all funneled to sort of that was our unofficial mission of how do we maintain a good functioning call department in Grafton? How do we bolster that? And I do feel that you know, Valentine demonstrated to me as somebody who could do that. It did that in Lincoln, Rhode Island for years. He got promoted up through the ranks. He demonstrated that. He took over as the first-time full-time chief in Groveland. They've never had a full-time chief and maintained a call department. Granted, he's only done it for a couple of years. But in my opinion, out of the 2 candidates between him and Legere, they both have more recent experience versus Chief Thurs. Chief Thurs, they said they did this over 25 years ago. So I think that although from an administrative standpoint, I think those are skills that can be taught. I think administrative skills, budgeting or oversight, paperwork, whatever it is that has to happen, I believe that those are skills that they must inherently have already, otherwise they wouldn't be chiefs in these departments. But more importantly, if there are things that Grafton needs in addition, then that is something that this board, as the employer for that chief, whoever we decide, need to set those expectations. We can't just say, hey, go chief, here's this document, go forth, and then we're gonna, we're gonna judge you in the rearview mirror. No, we have to be upfront and clear. This is what we want out of a department. And I feel that although, Chief Thurs, from an administrative standpoint, deals with a larger community, a larger department. Granted, it might be, what, you said it was a few $100,000 less?
So, no, their budget's $500,000.
$500,000. They're,
$300,000
$170 million year budget in that town. It's significantly different, but yet his budget is smaller. Right? So, again, I feel that, Chief Thurs, with his years of experience and the way he has administrative help, would probably be better off in a Natick or a Framingham. I just feel that me supporting him in Grafton, it's not a good cultural mix. And I think we need to look at somebody who understands more of Massachusetts, more of the nuances of Massachusetts. Granted that, people from other states, they can come and fit into the job, but I do feel that Valentine offers a lot of those qualities that we're looking for.
Well, I think I think, to be honest with you, it's kind of unfair to say that Thurs doesn't have any call experience. He's been there forever. It is still a 110 member call department. Their budget, it may be $500,000. They may only pay the guys, or the firefighters, $10 a call. Who knows? We have no idea.
Right.
But he has maintained a call department for forever, since he took over. He doesn't have any full-time people. Up in Groveland, the chief came in there and he hired, what did he say?
6 people in 18 months, right?
No, he put on 6 call guys. He hired a couple of full-timers to run the calls during the day. So I look at that and say, your goal is not to keep a call department. Your goal, coming out of a union department, is to create full-time positions.
Yep.
So Thurs has maintained a call department the entire time.
I think I'm ready to make a motion if you'll have one.
If there's anyone else that has any more
I
comments
just have
first.
one more question, comment for this board. Ray, you brought up with the study that was done talking to Millbury, Sutton, and I think Northbridge,
Holliston.
That's right. I remember that now. It's all coming back to me. Who do you think would be the best chief in terms of mutual aid?
The chief in terms.
No, for of our candidates, in terms of, I mean, we've had large fires in this town. As far as working with other fire chiefs in the area, as far as the mutual aid establishment.
I think Chief Thurs would do it.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with that.
All right, is there any further discussion from the board?
Just one last thing for me, I guess. I think Chief Thurs is adaptable. I think he's a smart guy. He's fairly entrepreneurial. He's doesn't seem as set in his ways, maybe. So I think he's going to adapt to Grafton, and I don't have as many concerns about the size of this town and his ability to meet the management challenges. I have confidence that he'll be able to do that.
How do we feel about his ask of meeting the current membership?
I think
My
that's
opinion
pending
is-
negotiations.
So I think we talked about maybe bringing that into executive session, but
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
we can consider it.
We can test that when we get to that point. Okay. All right, if there's any further discussion, I'll entertain a motion at this point.
I move the board select and appoint Fire Chief Thurs pending successful contract negotiations.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion made second to appoint Chief Thurs, Fire Chief, pending successful negotiations. Any discussion on the motion? I just want to say, although I spoke highly of the other candidates, I want to be in agreement with this board and show that although I have had my concerns, I do believe Chief Thurs has the capacity and the capability of meeting Grafton's needs. I just wanted to make sure that we had a good, healthy discussion about the other candidates, and we brought forth all of our points of view.
Sure.
But I do want to appreciate I appreciate this board's willingness to listen to one another, agree and disagree with one another, and I just want to say that I thought that this process was very thorough, as we could make it.
Absolutely.
I just want to say one more thing too during this discussion, which is I also agree with Peter. I mean, I think I knew going in that we were going to bring 3 solid candidates, and I was really honestly would have been happy with any direction that this would have gone. So even though, you know, I voiced my concerns, which I wanted to, I also feel confident in this motion and voting in favor. So thank you.
So while we're having discussion, I'd like to thank the, what's that? Sorry. No, go ahead.
Please.
No, I just
You're
looked,
good.
particularly the assessment center output for me was crucial. Great information. It was a very thorough process.
good.
I really enjoyed the commentary and the way it was scored, and just invaluable in terms of one of the tools that we used to evaluate these candidates. So, Mr. Pomeroy, I just want to thank you and your team for doing a great job all along the way.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
And before we conclude, actually, I'm going to go ahead and, if there's no further discussion on said motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion unanimously carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rob, for coming in tonight. Thank you to the Assessment Center. More importantly, I want to thank the Screening Committee for all of their due diligence and hard work. I know it was a very demanding, a very lengthy process, but I am very pleased with the outcome. And I think I speak on behalf of all the board that volunteers, doing a good job for this community. I just want to make sure that they get properly recognized. This was a very important task, and we're looking forward to seeing Grafton evolve into its next chapter with its leadership, with its fire department. And I'm very appreciative of all the hard work that everyone has done to bring us to this point. All right. Thank you. All right, so next up, we have on the agenda, discussion of delegation of contract negotiations with the appointed fire chief for Chief Thurs. So at this point, I wanted to know how the board wanted to do this. Typically, it's historically been left to the chair, but I'm not in favor of that. I want to know if this board would like to volunteer one of its members to negotiate a contract with Chief Thurs.
I would step up to the plate for that.
Any
And that would be in conjunction with the town administrator?
With the town
Yeah.
administrator.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks, Ray.
yeah, absolutely.
And likely Labor Council, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so could I have a motion to that effect?
What kind of motion do you need? So I make a motion, we
Delegate Ray Mead to...
delegate Ray Mead as our representative in negotiations with our fire chief candidate.
Second.
Motion made at second. Any discussion on the motion? Just know that, Ray, you've got the resources of town council and the town administrator as part of the...
I won't touch a thing.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Declare the motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
All right. Last but not least, we have a reason to go into executive session tonight. So I would ask the board now consider entering executive session in accordance with the open meeting law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, pursuant to Purpose 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made in second. A discussion on entering executive session. Hearing none. All those by roll call, please. Mr. Fazio.
Fazio, aye.
Mr. Mead.
Mead, aye.
Mr. Opton.
Often I.
Ms. Roy.
Roy, aye.
Carlson, I declare motion carried. We only reconvene in open session for the purposes of adjournment. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending tonight. Have a good night.